for the Architectural Board of Review for Monday, August 15th. And we'll start with a mic check, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Gradine.
Here.
Board Member Hopkins.
Here.
Board Member Kung.
Here.
Board Member Miller.
Here.
Board Member Tripp.
Here.
Board Member Witosh.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then on to public comment. If there's any member of the public who would wish to address the Architectural Board on an item not on today's agenda, please step forward. Seeing none, we'll go on to approval of the minutes for the ABR for August 1st, 2016. And we'll take comments on those minutes, please, starting with item 1 or before item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have a just a clarification on item 4 under the motion number 8. Study the possibility of adding parking closer to the unit being served. Okay, 5 or 6. On item 6, under the motion number 5, should read reduce, just cross out study, reduce the height of building E tower. Any other comments? Need a first and a second to approve the minutes.
First.
Howard,
Second.
Witosh, and Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Consent calendar for August 8th.
Mr. Chair, item A at 827 Reddick Street, project design and final approval with condition. Item B, 540 West Pueblo Street, postpone 1 week at the applicant's request. Item C, 410 East Haley Street, project design and final approval with development plan approval findings made, and those were reviewed by board members Miller and Hopkins.
Okay, we need a first and a second.
First.
Courtney and Scott, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And for today, please.
For August 15th, item A, 540 West Pueblo Street was final approval as submitted of a review after final. Item B, 101 North Milpa Street, project design and final approval with a condition. Item C, 3010 Foothill Road, project design and final approval as submitted. And item D, 305 West Montecito Street, final approval as submitted of review after final. Those were reviewed by Chair Gradine and Board Member Miller.
Is that today?
Yes. So you need a first and a second for today's consent calendar minutes. Scott?
Second.
And seconded by Board Member Witosh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals or future agenda items, etc.
Board Member Miller will step down from item 3 at 6100 Becknell Road, and Board Member Moore will be absent today. And that's all I have.
Okay. And do we have any subcommittee reports today? We've whipped through that part of the meeting, and so if the applicant is here, we can take item number 1, 400 block of Old Coast Highway. This is a new item, and action may be taken if sufficient information is received. It does require coastal review. This is a proposal to extend the southeast corner curb alignment of Old Coast Highway and Park Place, and to install rectangular rapid flashing beacons and 350 linear feet of sidewalk in order to provide a high visibility crossing. The project will also include the reconstruction of 5 driveway approaches to make them ADA compliant, construction of new sidewalk access ramps, relocation of 5 existing water meters, and the installation of bioretention basins for storm water management.
make copies of that.
Whenever you're ready, we can have your name for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Alex Ubaldo with the Public Works Engineering Division.
Welcome.
Just to give you guys a little bit of background about the project, we are the Parks and Recs Division are going to be constructing.
You got to turn your mic on.
Oh, here we go. There we go. So the Parks and Recs Division is going to be constructing a brand new children's park playground at the Municipal Tennis Center.
Can we turn this around so the camera can see it up right side down?
So Old Coast Highway is right here. Salinas is down over on this side. And basically, they're going to be constructing a children's park playground right here with a little bit of a pathway that connects to the existing sidewalk here at Old Coast Highway. So because of that project, we are proposing to install a rapid flashing beacons extending the curb alignment here at Park Place and Old Coast Highway, and also about 350 linear feet of sidewalk on the north side of Old Coast Highway, where it's currently missing. This neighborhood currently lacks a pedestrian network. Based on a recent community survey, there's about 600 children under the age of 11 or under, and the near 3 census block group that would potentially use this new playground. So we definitely need to provide a safe crossing between these neighborhoods from the north side of Old Coast Highway to the new Park Place playground.
Can we look at the photos briefly?
Sure.
Can you walk us through those? Let us know what we're looking at.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. So Old Coast Highway is along here. This is Park Place. This is where they're going to be extending the curb alignment and installing the rapid flashing beacons. The north side of Old Coast Highway currently doesn't have any sidewalk. There is sidewalk on the south side. The city right-of-way is about 7.5 feet from the curb face, so we're proposing to install a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 2-foot wide buffer between the roadway and the sidewalk. So we're proposing to mulch that parkway area, scarify it and mulch it. There's also going to be 5 existing driveways that are going to be reconstructed because they currently don't meet the ADA compliance. So we'll be reconstructing those so that they do. Mm-hmm. On this side, we're looking at the tennis center. So that's where the curb extension is going to be placed, and then the rapid flashing beacons is going to be constructed. You can see the corner of Old Coast Highway and Harbor View Drive where there's currently no existing sidewalk, no ramps. There is an existing pine tree that will be removed as part of this project. It was actually approved and supported by the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and it was approved for complete removal by the Parks and Rec Commission on July 27th. We have existing water meters that are actually going to be relocated into the Parkway area. There's about 5 of those that are going to be relocated. There's also the Twin Pines apartment sign that's inside the 7.5 feet right away. So we've coordinated with the property owner, and they're completely okay with removing that existing sign.
Can we look at?
The light poles are actually not in the way, so they're not going to be relocated as part of this project. So you can see here, there's still missing sidewalk. There's some bushes and some planters that are probably going to be partially removed because it's in the way. Continuing on. So this is just looking at Old Coast Highway along the north side. And it stops about at this driveway for this project. We're considering this as phase 1 because it's funded by the Community Development Block Grant funds. Measure A will be funding the rest of the sidewalk that will be constructed all the way to Salinas, which will probably be constructed next year. So the rapid flashing beacon that's going to be proposed at the Park Place and Old Coast Highway looks just like this. And these have been approved by ABR and HLC at various locations throughout the city. So the same ones are being installed.
Okay. Get these out of the way and you can walk it through the drawings.
Sure. So based on these plans, the Municipal Tennis Center is over here on this side. The park playground is just next to the driveway on this side. The Parks and Recs Division is going to be constructing a little pathway that connects from the tennis center and will connect to this curb extension at the corner of Park Place and Old Coast Highway. The rapid flashing beacons are going to be installed right along here. There's no sidewalk on the north side, and so we're proposing to install ramps and then 5-foot sidewalk, then reconstructing the driveway. It's about 350 linear feet, and then eventually we'll connect back to Salinas Street.
Okay.
So in order to meet the Tier 3 requirements, we're also going to be constructing some bioretention systems. One is being proposed here in this little island next to the curb extension. And then the other bioretention system is going to be constructed just east of Harbor View Drive. There's a crown in the road, so the south side portion of the roadway will be collecting water and collecting the runoff at this bioretention, and then the north side will be collecting it on this side. And then this is just details of the rapid flashing beacons that's being installed at that corner. So again, this is a CDBG funded project, and they expect us to have this project completed and closed out by April 30th, 2017. So we're requesting design review and final project approval so that we can move forward with this project in a timely manner in order to complete and meet the grant funding deadline.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
So we'll open public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to comment on this project? Seeing none, we'll go to questions from the board, and we could start over with Board Member Kuhn.
No questions.
Scott?
Was this a little strip related to the biofiltration, or is that just mulch?
That's just mulch area. So we're scarifying that dirt and just mulching it. So the bioretention is only going to be at this island and then also along the north side. But the 2-foot parkway is just all mulch.
And what is that, about a foot or 18 inches tops?
Yes.
Okay. Would you be opposed to making that just concrete?
We can make it concrete, but the city pedestrian master plan wants us to have some kind of barrier between the roadway and also the pedestrians. So we were going for the 2-foot wide separation.
That was it. Thank you. Courtney.
Are you only proposing the removal of one tree, just the one pine?
There's actually 2 trees. There's one pine here, and then there's a yucca tree on this side, right next to this driveway.
That tree's not shown on your drawing, so the one that's coming out here, or is it on another drawing?
It's
Oh,
right
is it there?
Yeah, so that note calls out for the tree removal, and then also on this side.
Okay.
The bioretention areas, will those be planted?
They will not be planted, so they have special engineered soils. The section of it is shown right here. It's about 24 inches of sand, compost, and
But you're not proposing to plant those or any of the parkway areas?
no.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, Amy.
Did you consider like other materials other than mulch, like stone, like rocks or stone?
We did. It would just add more cost to the project, and the CDBG funds are actually just funding part of the project, so it's not fully funded, and so it would have to come out of general city funds, and so we figured that mulch was probably the most cost efficient at
Okay.
this time.
And I know you just answered there was engineered soil, but can you plant along those 2-foot strips where it's not bioretention, like down the line, if it's possible?
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
All of the areas will be able to be planted.
No. Okay.
That's standard.
Okay.
Howard, questions?
So this, I noticed that one tree, the pine tree, how tall is that tree?
It's pretty tall. I would say my guess is probably 25, 30 feet,
I think it's probably closer to 50.
50 feet.
That's a huge tree.
I did.
And the trunk is this big?
It is about 2 feet wide, yes. I met with the street tree advisory committee out there in the field, and they saw it, and I also met with the property owner, and they were completely okay with removing that pine tree.
Is it on city property or on private property?
It's within the 7.5 feet city right away.
And the other tree, on the other side, you said it was a pine and some other tree?
Yucca trees.
And is this these strips, 2-foot strips? These are basically just unplanted areas now.
Yeah, there's some that are currently dirt, and there are some that are currently mulch. So we're proposing to just mulch all of them.
So is it the city's idea that maybe someday, when we have water, that these could be planted?
Eventually, yes. We are supposed to work with the Parks and Recreation Department as one of the conditions from the Parks and Recreation meeting to eventually maybe have something planted in the 2-foot wide.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Okay. So did you look at trying to save the tree or not?
We did. Unfortunately, they are too big. There's going to be roots that would probably damage the sidewalk. So the only way to put the sidewalk in that area would be to remove the trees.
And that was the opinion of the city
arborist.
City
yes.
arborist. Okay. All right. Is it damaging things now? Is it damaging the street?
It's not damaging the street, no.
Okay. Huh. All right. So you're just worried about the sidewalk getting damaged?
Yes. And also, if I would probably have to consult with the city arborist on this, but trying to remove some of the roots could probably destabilize that tree and could potentially be a liability in the future if we prune it down enough, and it could be unstable later on.
Uh-huh. Okay. But we don't have an arborist's letter
No.
from him or anything like that. No. Okay. So comments. Kip.
I'm fine with the proposed sidewalk and curb cuts and pedestrian access as submitted.
Okay. Thanks. Scott.
I think I feel the same way, with the understanding that down the line, some of those areas get planted.
All right. Courtney.
I agree. I think the loss of the tree is unfortunate, but it appears to obstruct the path of travel almost all the way to the back of the sidewalk.
Correct. Yeah,
So
the
in
trunk.
order to move around it, they have to encroach on private property, is what I'm seeing. So I did have another question quickly, though. What's happening here?
So this is currently existing sidewalk that goes up there, but we're actually just removing part of that sidewalk and just mulching it with the rest of the park area.
Did the street tree committee require mitigation for the tree removal?
We did not receive any from them, no.
That's all.
Okay. Amy?
Yeah, I agree with Scott and Tip. I think that it's acceptable as proposed with the understanding of potential for the planting down the line.
Howard?
I agree with the comments. I'm still not comfortable with this tree solution. I understand that, the tree roots, cutting a root may destabilize the tree. For many years, the Italian stone pines on Anapamu have been cut, and the roots have been cut, and they've, taken measures with those trees in order to keep the sidewalks from being a hazard. But those trees are like a landmark. This is a big tree, and it kind of defines that corner in the neighborhood across the street from the tennis park there. And so if the tree is unhealthy and stress due to the drought stress and all that, I can see why a doctor would say it has to be removed. But if the tree is healthy and it is an important tree, it could be maybe addressed. Maybe that someone could look into the feasibility of cutting roots, see what could happen to preserve the tree, and somehow either build around it or take into account, let the urban pattern move around nature rather than eradicating nature for the urban pattern. Those are my comments. And I would like to ask for a letter from an arborist which says the tree is not healthy and that there is no way that it could be preserved and the roots cut to make a sidewalk in there without endangering the tree or the passersby. I mean, if the tree falls over in a wind or after a rain, that's important. Those are my feelings. Those trees, it took 50 years to grow that tree. Maybe you can replace it in somewhere else.
Right, yeah, and I think that's what the letter from the Parks and Recs Commission, that we're supposed to coordinate with them and potentially replace the tree that is being removed. Not necessarily at the same location, but
so does these plans say
somewhere
that?
near the project.
Do these plans talk about a replacement tree?
Not for this project, no. The only thing that I'm concerned about too, which I will check, is whether or not we would meet ADA for the sidewalk. We need at least a 4-foot wide path for pedestrians or somebody in a wheelchair that can go through there. And if that tree is, because it's only 7.5 feet from the curve face, we're very limited on the city right away.
Are there any other parts of this project that encroach on private land? Unless you are doing work on private land.
Yes. So the only work that we're doing on private property would be the AC conform. Mm-hmm. So just to match up with the existing asphalt concrete on their side of the property. So in areas where the driveway, the back of the driveway or the back of the sidewalk, in order to make the drainage work, we sort of have to go back a few feet into their property to replace the concrete, the asphalt concrete.
So you're getting owner permission to do that, obviously, to do that work on private land. So if you needed to move the sidewalk out around the tree, you would make a request to the homeowner, right? That the sidewalk needed to encroach a couple of feet onto their property, wherever it was, right? And just like you've gained permission over here.
Right. It isn't in our practice to have the sidewalk on their property.
I understand. Yeah. Well, I'm with Howard. I think just as the sidewalk is a value both to children and adults, I think the tree is of tremendous value as well and irreplaceable. So. Or maybe it can, but there is no program here. There's no indication that there's a replacement designed into the project. So I think, in my view, the plans need to indicate either replacement of the tree or a way to salvage the tree. So who would like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion for approval as submitted.
Okay, so we need a seconder.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Scott. All in favor, please raise your hands.
So can we discuss this? Unless there's some kind of a provision to either deal with the tree, I would not support this motion, all due respect.
Same here. So we are into a vote now. So all in favor of the motion as stated, raise your hand, please. We have 3 to 3, yeah. I would propose that the project be given project design approval and return to the consent calendar with a proposal to either move the sidewalk around the tree to salvage the tree or to provide replacement for the tree.
It sounds.
Going to define
And that would be on the
replacement?
consent. No, because we have to propose, but it has to be, a sizable tree. You can't come back with a, 10-gallon, pine or whatever that you're going to put in a 2-foot planter. So that I realize it's a problem for you because I don't see a place where you can put it on this in the scope of work that's shown here. But I'm sure with your cohorts you can come up with something.
The cost of removing a tree like that is substantial. I mean, I've seen the crews that do that. They're on it for a couple of days with equipment and 5 men and up in the saws, and they cut it in pieces and shut down the street and traffic control and everything.
Okay, so we have a second motion. Would someone like to second?
I'll second that with the amendment. Be nice if the maker of the motion would agree to that.
What's that?
The maker, if the original maker would agree to that amendment to his motion.
Oh, I
Which
just
is
made a new
approved as-
motion.
You just
I just made a new motion.
It's a new motion.
It's project design approval to come back to the consent calendar with,
Yeah, I'll second that.
okay, so seconded by Howard. All in favor, please raise your hand. Got 4.
Wow. So unanimous.
All right, there you
It
go.
wasn't going the other way.
Thanks very
So
much.
is that indefinite to consent then?
Indefinite,
Thanks.
unless you want to come back next week.
Thank you.
All right,
Way early.
yes, we are.
Plans are very well drawn, and your presentation is excellent.
Thank you. You didn't look nervous.
You want this?
well.
Extremely well. So, next item, we'll have to wait.
We're early, so
3:45.
15 minutes. We can take it as early as 3:45.
All right, thanks. So we'll take a short break. Monday, August 15th, and we're on item number 208 Oceano Avenue. This is a proposal for major remodel, partial demolition, and reconfiguration of an existing two-story duplex. I'll turn my mic on now. This is, yes, a remodel, partial demolition, and reconfiguration of a duplex, which will result in a 1,400 square foot duplex at the rear of an 8,700 square foot parcel. A 558 square foot covered porch on the ground floor, a 302 square foot uncovered deck at the second floor, new access stairways, and approximately 520 square foot uncovered roof deck with fireplace. A portion of the structure will be demolished, including as-built work as part of the major remodel to alter the structure to a Spanish architectural style. The garage size will be increased and building footprint widened to provide a reduced 3-foot side yard setback at the ground floor. 4 tandem covered parking spaces are proposed in the new parking configuration. Other site work will include the replacement of existing fencing with new site walls, a new planter, new driveway, relocation of trash enclosure, and new landscaping. The existing 4-unit apartment building at the
front of the site also requires approval of as-built window replacements and proposed storage areas. Staff hearing officer approval is required for zoning modifications related to building separation and open yard requirements and coastal review. 3 parking design waivers are being requested from the Transportation Division, and zoning violations are being addressed as well. So there's comments only today. Requires environmental assessment, staff hearing officer approval of zoning modifications, and a coastal development permit, and the 3 parking waivers. Welcome. Your name, please.
Architect Craig Goodman. Thanks for having me today.
Sure.
As you described, there's a number of ZIR issues that were kind of resolved originally here. I was actually just hired to take care of this back duplex, but there's been a number of issues on the front fourplex as well. So maybe just to start with the duplex in back, we had some enclosed garage area that was noted on the last ZIR, and we currently have a studio on the ground level with the 2-car garage. It's non-conforming, and we're proposing to make it conforming and also convert the studio to a 1-bedroom, capturing about 138 square feet on the second level and connecting a stair for a kitchen and a deck and accessibility to the roof deck that we are proposing as well. The front structure has as-built windows, so we've taken some direction from the city to try to modify the fenestrations with some additional trim to match the new design in the duplex in the rear. We also have some community spaces that we're opening up, some as-built storage areas. In the front of the property, there's no improvement currently, no landscaping, and no public roads of greenscape or sidewalk of any type. So we're proposing. We also have an oak tree that's leaning. Just like the last applicant, we've entertained keeping it, although it's leaning to such an extent we feel that demolishing it and replacing it is probably the most appropriate after reviewing it with the owner. We did consider root mitigation, but undermining the tree would, in fact, given the angle it's at, could significantly undermine its ability to stand. There's an existing pine tree, 30 or so feet, that we intend to keep, to remain as is. And this is on the Oceano Street, 2/3 of the way down, right adjacent City College. So City College backs up as the backyard to that.
Could you walk us through the photos so we can see what's there now?
Actually, it's not part of that. Let me. So these are just a myriad of pictures, both from the front and rear structure. I'll just start at the top at A. This is looking from the driveway back out at the entrance at the driveway. And further looking at building A, it's a soft story with open parking below. And D, E, and F are all the rear structure as they exist, and I have it on page 8.5, the existing exterior elevations. There's an existing stairway that is under the as-built deck in Unit B, and we're proposing to keep it and improve it to strengthen it. And there's another view here. This is a picture opposite the courtyard, looking back at Unit A and the enclosed storage area we're opening up for community space. First row of pictures here shows the ZIR issue with the existing unit at the rear B, right in here, that we're proposing to demolish, bring it back to its last approved iteration. Also, you can see down at the bottom here the infill of the glazing in between the staggered post and beam construction that this has at this bungalow, I would say, stylistically right now. Further pictures of the railings and stairs going to the Unit B. And then picture of upstairs at Unit B, the uncovered deck as it remains, and it's got non-compliant handrails, which we're improving, and then just some utility at Unit A, looking at the carport, and then some pictures of the driveway after some tree mitigation was already complete. They're yet to provide a full landscape plan, but they'll have to as a result of doing the demolition to some of the landscaping on site. There's an adjacent apartment to the south. It has a 3-level tower on the corner, and that's indicated here. You can also see the 6-foot side yard area. I actually had some photos formatted in one of these sets, but I don't know that I see it in this one. So, did an area study. Just to show the areas of improvement, we placed the second floor in the roof plan here, but just the existing versus proposed. And essentially, we've asked for a tandem garage encroaching onto the side setback another 2 feet, and that area has been reduced a bit. We still feel that we have the 1250. We are non-conforming in that we don't have a 20 by 20 existing space anywhere. We've done a couple studies of where that might exist on site, and in each case, it's encroached by a non-conforming as-built condition. So we've increased our roof deck by 1 foot to provide that 20 by 20 in the spirit of having that conformance existing within our proposal. And this area shows the private area, the deck to the studio that becomes the 1 bedroom. So we have accessibility for the Unit A to go up on the roof deck if they would like. Working with the city early on, we were asked to show that it actually worked solar ordinance-wise, which we felt it would not need a modification. It had an exemption based on the shadow studies. We're not encroaching onto any existing space, only a parking lot, which actually was within the solar ordinance language. So we provided kind of an overall view a little further back, and it wasn't quite enough, so we elaborated with an isometric on the next page. But this shows the December 21st, 9 a.m., 12, and 3 p.m. sun conditions to show that we are conforming. And then just a bit better view on that 3 p.m. shadow going on to the City College area. We really wanted to show that it was a rebuild, so we've done our demo plans, which I don't know that we need to go through unless you need more clarification, validation for that. But we've done two sets. One brought back the ZIR to conforming, and then this addresses just our design. So we're under 50% demo for exterior. And we've also done a little site work independent of the duplex design. The owner had a fence built without the benefit of a permit, and so we've mitigated that to be a nice conforming fence. And so this is ready to be issued, and the 8'4" fence will be a 6-foot fence once it's complete. And then all the other landscaping that we had on the fence drawings we took off, and just what remains is the front yard landscaping, the green space with the street tree to be designated, a replacement tree for the oak tree that we're going to demo, a bit of improvement in the driveway just to make it more contiguous, and then really embellishing a bit of the design elements that we're using in the back and the front. So we've planted a potted plant in a wall that extends out beneath the balcony area, but it's not usable space right now. Put a nice header beam above the window frame to announce the entry a little more, and then just turned a little bit of a site wall down and around into the front of the driveway there. And there's a little bit of a enlarged view of that with the new address. And then to the design, this is the ground level here, as we've talked about already. We demoed a lot of this studio to create a stairway for a one-bedroom. The laundry remained as it was. The garage was increased by the patio or deck space we have above. So we've got 40 end-to-end, and we've got really 19.7, not quite conforming. So we've created two openings where you would normally open your door to get that 20 by 20 clear in those locations. We've utilized a lot of this outdoor deck as kind of a veranda space idea, a combination of a cantilevered element, and then the garage comes out flush. It's all right back to the setback line pretty much. In the back, we've got a 6-foot setback on the side, but we've got probably another 6 inches. So this is probably as built at 6'6", and we're keeping it, we're strengthening it in its location. And we've added an arcade. It's gone through a couple iterations of just arched opening, and now it's actually an arcade. And we've kind of matched that idea with this community room that was a storage area. And there's a courtyard that separates them. The city would like that to be fenced off, so we've shown that. And we've added a tree in the center to just provide a little shade. The main entry for the ground level used to be straight in. We've gone around under, and this is our main entry now. This is all uncovered deck as it is now. On the second floor, as you can see, we had an existing deck. We just removed the stairs and provided a new configuration. We also added to the east as much deck as we could to increase this unit's deck space. The kitchen remains as it was. We've added a fireplace and a living room. The bedrooms are as they were. We've reconfigured the bathrooms, but the count is the same. And then on the deck, really what the owner wanted, why I was asked to do this, was to provide a roof deck. So there's a wonderful view south to the ocean, and we've provided really site-wide usage of this for the community of the residents. It's 400 square foot clear. There is a fireplace up there. We've got an element that's covered for inclement weather if they want to go up there and look at the ocean perhaps on a rainy day or when it's wet. And then some existing elevations just to show you what we had, showing some of the sun ordinance information. And then looking at the east in particular, this was all enclosed, so this becomes a demo for the ZIR that opens a lot of it up.
These are
Existing, yes. And what we're proposing is wholly different in its idea. As you can see, it's calling out quite a few new materials. We're re-roofing it. We're changing the pitch direction 90 degrees, increasing the solar access to the neighbor actually in that move. You can see the line of the existing roof superimposed on the plan to get a reference of the difference in height that we're proposing. We are up at the 30-foot level using the full envelope in that location only. And we've masked these elements with as few roofs as possible, but also using more than one roof to minimize the mass. And this perhaps is the elevation with the most privacy issues to the neighbor to the south, which we propose a number of screening elements both at the property line, at the second level deck, as well as maybe on the deck as well. Screening of plants and fauna. And just looking at the north elevation with the two garage openings, we carried this wrought iron idea all the way around on the ground level. Essentially, all the detailing of it is within that panel that we're kind of repeating. Again, that portion is cantilevered, and then that's fleshed out. And then going to Building A improvements, there were a community room that was really a storage room that was asked to be a community room. We just returned it as an existing non-conforming storage, adding a door back in, which it doesn't have, and then converting the storage area to a community room, and also relocating the garbage in this location. So currently the garbage exists at the Unit B in the back, within the setback, and we're providing it outside the setback in a gated area that's only accessible from the front side. And there's an elevation I can show you that. On the second level as well, just the as-built windows called out. And then just the exterior elevations of Building 1, and then the improvements of this community room and how it interfaces with the arcade at the duplex that we're doing, separated by the courtyard. And a matching arch going from the courtyard in this direction, shown there. And the trim shown on the windows. Fenestration updates. And then just recently a few sections to try to show that we are under 50%, how we're strengthening what's existing. I do have a study model, very rough here, that shows it, just the massing. So I encourage you to maybe walk around it and get a sense of some other angles that maybe aren't shown on those elevations that we provided. The fence obviously is not bowing as it is. And we've got some materials that we've started to think about in terms of what we'd like to have. Combination of terracotta and off-white smooth trowel plaster of some type. More of a redwood, we're thinking, for the railings, and a two-piece mission tile element. That's what I got.
All right. Thanks very much. So we'll open up public comment. See no one. We'll go to questions. Before we go to questions, we'll go to a comment from Mr. Limon.
Yes. What I wanted to do is give you some background information that helps you explain the dynamics that are going on with this building. First of all, the existing building at the rear that's being proposed to be remodeled is non-conforming with respect to the side yard setback. It's, I think, 5 feet, a little bit over 5 feet. The current setbacks are 6 feet. So what the applicant is doing is taking advantage of the 3-foot setback by rebuilding that and allowing the garage to be widened and getting closer. The dynamic that's happening upstairs, though, is that in order to keep that wall at the non-conforming setback, we're trying to preserve that wall in place so they don't have to essentially knock it down and move it in 6 inches or less than a foot.
Okay.
So that's what's happening with that. That's sort of what's guiding the second floor. You also have some as-built that are being modified and removed and reconstructed, so that's also part of the project. The question of complete demolition was brought forward initially with the amount of changes, especially because the roof essentially is being taken off the structure, as well as several walls. And the entry configurations are being entered at different points to get into the structure. And the reason I bring those issues up is that's necessitating several things. One is a stairway. It encroaches between the two buildings. There's typically a 15-foot setback requirement between the two buildings. So what we would like to hear from the board is whether you support that stairway configuration at the front of the building. We believe that it actually adds to the entry identification for the units in the back. So that's why we're supportive of that encroachment, that 15-foot setback encroachment. So we'd like to hear about that. Unfortunately, by doing that, that also removes some of the 1,250 square feet of open yard between the two buildings. That was a patch of area for open space. But the applicant has chosen to use a roof deck to actually make up for some of that lost open space. And so we dealt with that issue by having him design a stairway that would lead directly up to the roof deck so some of the other tenants could take advantage of that deck. So there's been some preliminary redesigns that have occurred with staff. And then finally, with respect to whether this is a complete demo rebuild, that's what necessitated more parking. When you do more than 50% additions, there is a trigger mechanism for additional parking. He has since provided structural analysis that may not require the upgrade to parking. That's something that we'd like to hear about, whether that would help the project if the tandem parking solution isn't necessary. Would it look better? Would it be something at the parking level?
Would it look better to do what?
Well, if we don't trigger the 4 spaces, he could essentially have a 2-car garage back there, or 2 one-car garages. So we'd like to hear your take on the overall size, bulk, and scale of whether that would help or hurt the project to make that smaller. And then one last thing, this is a transformation of the rear building. It's actually an upgrade. You still have a very 60-ish looking building to the front of the street, which has vinyl windows installed. So that's one of the things that I think was pointed out as being an as-built alteration. I don't know if that helps or hurts the building, but somebody did attempt to upgrade the windows. So that's all I have to share with you.
Okay, thanks. Questions from the board? Tip?
Definitely questions, but just thought of microphone didn't work. It should be working now, I think. The plans are very strange, and I'm still trying to get my hand around it.
Can we put this back on the floor, sir?
So I guess my first question is one of the reasons you don't want to do a total demolition, that's why you try to save the wall on the second floor and adding the garage, expanding the garage, so you can get a waiver on parking? Did I hear it right?
No, it's so you can keep that wall plane at that dimension. The minute you touch it, you have to move it back to the 6-foot setback.
You mean the second floor wall?
Second floor wall, yeah. But he is moving the first floor wall out.
But he's keeping the second floor wall the way it is.
Yes.
To save 6 inches.
Well, 30 square feet.
Is that crucial?
For the
Obviously, it's
owner,
crucial.
Yes.
So how are you shoring up that wall and rebuilding the first floor? And are you?
Well, we proposed some temporary bracing that would
and
keep that wall in place.
So you go through all the expenses to brace it, just to.
We plan to keep that temporary brace incorporated into the final structure. So we're working to.
Even though you're rebuilding the roof completely.
Correct.
Okay. And then you have some steps going up to the roof. It seemed like they are really steep. What are those steps? What are the risers?
Well, I don't know that we've maxed out to 9.75 would be the max code-wise. I think we're showing 13 risers right now. And there's a 9-foot.
I see. And the zoning allows the garage to be within 3 feet of the setback line?
Yes.
But then but the modification to keep the distance between the two buildings less than 15 feet?
That's correct.
Because the new staircase being added?
Yes.
And that staircase is used to access the upstairs unit? And the roof. So the roof's being used by you have 2 units, am I right?
Well, we proposed that the entire site would have availability.
Oh, that's for entire site.
Right. But primarily, that's correct, the 2 units.
So the roof deck is crucial for the calculation to work. That's one of the requirements.
That's correct. You are required to have 1,250 square feet. They were non-conforming with respect to the width, the 20-foot minimum requirements. And so they're essentially taking some of the open yard from the ground floor and transferring it up to the third floor deck.
Or that could be a variance.
It'll be a modification because
Same as the width.
Yes.
I see. And would the city look at doing a modification so you go to the expenses of adding a roof deck?
Well, it's one way to propose it. I mean, it's sort of a non-conforming situation already, and so they're taking some from the ground floor and transferring it up, and arguing that it's similar quantities.
I'm just asking because it seems like a lot of work just doing that roof deck with another story above it. So right now you're asking only for one modification, the staircase.
No, there's the question of the distance between buildings for the staircase.
That's a one.
And then open yard and using an alternative means
Roof
to
deck, right.
alternative roof deck.
Okay.
Yes.
That's it. Two.
I think that's it, right? We're down to two. The waivers, parking waivers.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, Scott.
Question for you. One approach the new staircase that was just mentioned, do you go down the driveway or you go down the side yard of the existing building?
I guess either would be accessible to that stairway. We've got it gated from the driveway side now.
Driveway coming up.
Okay. So you walk down the driveway and you double back.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Is there a reason it's oriented the way it is as opposed to kind of being more direct in the driveway?
Right. Well, due to the portico element and its location, having a stair going from the parking up in the opposite direction would encroach into the parking.
Oh, I see.
So there's not enough linear run.
If you've got a car park.
No.
Courtyard.
That's a courtyard.
Correct. But if you were to flip it on the other side and
Well, I was saying
look at the even the clear space at the bottom stair, there's not enough clearance there to make that idea work.
If
We
you
did actually
have
think
this
of that.
central element that you have in
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And do you understand the cantilever of the deck at the back? Is that new or is that? I see it in the model.
Right. No, that's entirely new. So all the rear deck area right here does not exist. The current deck ends at the face of the existing building, so we're creating all of that as new, and half of it, as you can see, is cantilever, and half of it flushes out with the garage.
And so the deck on the corner is for the unit facing the back.
Yes, this two-bedroom unit.
And does the studio down below have two decks?
No, it has one. So it has this deck.
Right.
It has this deck.
Okay.
And then they have access to the roof.
And then whose deck on the ground floor?
This would be the first unit as well. So
Okay.
They
So they
do
have a lot of covered porch under there.
yes, and this is existing, and then this is made for community as well, community space.
How does one from the community get? They walk.
Right, well, here on the drawings, Okay, so there's a flagstone path that leads around, and then this is gated from the residence at the face of the building back, and then this is all open for community use.
Okay.
It could be, a lot of different uses back there.
Okay.
And then the access to the garage is open
Okay.
in that direction.
And it was a little unclear to me what visual changes you're making to the front building. You're adding an arch. Can you walk us through that again?
Certainly. Here's the whole front building. Driveway side. All of the windows, as the chairman said, have been replaced with vinyl as-built, so we provided 1x4 trim to all the windows. We provide a little wrought iron to a vent. And then on the opposite side, adjacent to the new duplex we're proposing, is a series of arches that match somewhat. And then turning back in this direction is this face that you saw on the site photos. This is the interior courtyard side that
Street
you
side
can't
stays
see.
the same, more or less.
Right, the street side is right here. And we did a bit of improvement with potted plant embedded in part of the wall. We're going to redo this was a flagstone wall with plaster and a nice terracotta coping, and then a step wall with the address.
Okay. So there's an existing path along this elevation here?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I see it now. That's it. Thank you very much.
Courtney?
So this is common space.
Yes, we envisioned it as common space.
How do you think that'll be used? I mean, it feels very private to this unit.
Right. Well, there's a laundry access right here, so it's being used just circulation-wise. It's open for that, but there is a bathroom here, so there's privacy issues certainly for this ground unit in that location. This is all uncovered, and we felt, it can be utilized in a few different ways. Hadn't really.
And that contributes to your open space requirement, or it's additional to that?
We have counted some of that space, although because it's covered, I don't know that it is counting as, it's not. So it's above and beyond the minimum.
And you're proposing this to be hardscape with just the one planter in the middle?
Yeah, it is currently, but it's being used to park, so we're fencing it
I see.
as well, and then creating a flagstone courtyard with a potted plant or a tree.
I don't have much else. I just had one minor question on your elevation, where you have that new pot added. I don't know where that went.
In the
Looks like there's, I don't know which building it's on. It's where you've got the new pot attached to the wall.
5-0.
It just appears to be right underneath a row of mailboxes.
Yeah, it's actually it's in front. It's in the foreground. So just looking at the plan, here's the front building, and this projection is kind of like the other side, but about double the length. And it is 48 inches tall and just an enclosed.
So this is the pot?
Yes.
And where are your mailboxes?
Actually, back under the
okay.
stairs, so
Great.
a bit of a drawing issue.
That's all.
Okay. Amy?
I only have a couple of extra questions, but as far as the tandem parking, are you like at the minimum that you can be? Because it seems really tight to get 2 cars in there, or even 4.
We're probably providing one more space than we need to from what we understand, but we had 2 non-conforming spaces in the setback we lost. These were exterior non-covered spaces, so we're down 2 spots, and so we've recovered those 2, so the net is the same, but it's covered now.
Is the width of the
We've
garage,
achieved
so you're pushing the garage out to make it wider than what it was
And
originally?
longer.
Right.
Right.
Okay. And there's currently 2 cars that park in there?
Yes, and it's narrow than conforming width, which would be 20 clear. We've got 19.7, but in the locations where we felt the doors would open, we've actually opened the wall and provided wrought iron out at the edge, so we have 20 clear in those
Only
locations.
in those locations?
Correct.
But not for like for the
Correct.
entire garage? Okay. And then you also mentioned having potential privacy issues on the south elevation for the unit upstairs. How are you proposing to mitigate that?
Screening, in a word, but
Is there any like visual or
well,
drawing?
we've got plan showing a lot of screening, a combination of screening, both trees. Maybe there's some bamboo. There's some different screening elements at the ground level on the side setback. Now then on the second level, there's a bunch of deck space we plan, additional screening there. And then we've got potted plants stepping up to the roof deck, which should enable, a lot of screening in that location as well.
Because it looks like the issue will be at the second floor, not the first floor.
So we do have a neighbor. We have an apartment building in front, which is shown in a single-family residence in back.
Greg, can you put it on the table so that
Certainly.
the public
Yep.
can see things?
So we did feel that this neighbor would have the biggest privacy issue, and so we felt there would be screening along here, as well as on top of the deck. And we've also provided a lot of the deck space kind of hidden out of the way, not within this area. So once you're up, you're kind of out of the privacy issue of the neighbor.
Yeah, I guess, are you showing planters and things on that second level? That's what I'm wondering, because there's nothing shown in the
No, that's a
drawing
good
either.
idea, though, planter.
So
Built-in
it's not
planter.
shown right now.
So we just envisioned
You're
potted
just-
plants that would be
Okay.
put up there to provide privacy.
And then the oak tree you were talking about in the front yard, so is there like an arborist report?
No.
Because you talked about it leaning, but
We did. We spoke with the owner, we spoke with the city, we put a call into Tim. Had not received feedback, but we can pursue getting further support with regard to that.
I think my last question is just as far as like, because this is one lot and there's proposed open space shared between both buildings, is there a reason that you're moving one building into kind of a more Spanish Mediterranean style and not changing the other building?
We are trying to match it a bit.
Well, it's going to look completely different from the front building.
Right. That is correct.
So I guess my question is how to tie the lot together, like architecturally,
Right.
so that there's like a cohesive.
Well, we did a bit of that on the archway that's on.
That's probably the only. Is that the only?
Right, and then we provided some detailing to the front, which I can show you again.
Just the front wall.
Well, the front wall has.
You can point to the one.
Yeah, the elevation is 5.0. So looking at the streetscape itself,
Page 50, A50.
50, we provided a heavy header detail in 3 locations in the front facing the street. The potted plant, which is embedded in the wall. We've stuccoed the low wall, put a terracotta.
But generally, they're going to look like two different. They're going to be two different styles. I was just wondering if there was an effort to really tie them together.
Somewhat. We've been taking direction from the city how much we've needed to upgrade the front building to match. So the client only had the intent of doing the rear building, even though he moved forward with as-built windows.
Okay.
So we've been responding as asked.
Okay. Thanks.
Howard.
I have a lot of questions, but I think I'm going to wait and then let them be answered as we get through into the project. But it's a lot of my questions have to do with my inability to comprehend the drawings.
All right. So just want to make sure that I'm not missing something. But do we have these are neighboring footprints here, looks like. Is that the neighbor's footprint right there?
Yeah, it actually shows on this side more for that one.
So they're right on the property line then?
Well, with the storage shed, they are.
Uh-huh.
And then we've got a building that's
but we
probably
didn't.
non-conforming at 5 feet too.
Okay, but we didn't get any street photos showing other buildings on the street. Doesn't look like
Well,
that.
this
Or did I miss it?
aerial.
No, I mean street elevation wise.
Right. No, streetscape I don't have for you showing this entire street, but you might get a sense from this that there are a number of apartment buildings marching down the street.
Okay. And it looks like your neighbor also has a similar configuration.
Right. The single-family residence, the one that we thought had the most privacy issues, is located right here.
These two parcels? Or one?
No, they're one.
So just again, I think I got it, but the pathway to this unit, which is 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and the kitchen is upstairs right here.
Correct.
Very small kitchen and very tiny little dining area that's upstairs right there. And the entrance to it is right here. So how do you get to it again? Oh, you go through a gate. This is a gate. Because this is
portal.
community space,
Right.
or it's access to community space.
Right. And here's the portal in elevation.
Yeah. All right. And then
We felt that the accessibility would mostly be on this side, both now for trash and, walking.
And there's the square footage of that unit is how much? What is the square footage of each of the units in the back?
It's listed right here. I think it's
was reading that. I could not. it did not make
493
sense.
square feet. We're adding 138 square feet from upstairs. So just to reiterate for you here.
Just give me the total.
Yeah,
for
so,
each one. For each
so
unit.
we've got a proposed and an existing. You want the proposed only. So
yes, proposed. Thank
okay,
you.
so we've got 493 gross on the ground. We
Not
take,
the total, just the total
Right.
square footage for the unit.
and then we're taking another 136 from up above from the second floor. So that becomes what, 525, something like that.
You don't have the total on the plan, so
I haven't added those two.
Okay. And then the other units back there. There's two other units, right?
Just upstairs. So it's a flat upstairs.
One flat upstairs.
Yes.
Only one unit B.
Right.
You're calling
Correct.
it unit B, which is how much? What is the square footage of
Well,
that?
it's reduced to 974 gross.
Are you limited in how much square footage you can add to the project?
We are adding no habitable square footage whatsoever.
Okay.
This is all a remodel of existing and exterior space that's being added. So even the modification for this portal that projects, that requires modification review, is for non-habitable space.
Okay.
There is no habitable space being requested in this proposal.
And this is public space also, this little thing?
Yes.
So this bedroom is looking out onto a public garden. It's right adjacent to a public
Right.
garden, and the bathroom is looking out onto little public space.
Right.
as
And
well.
we're happy to reconsider making that more
Well,
part
I'm
of the
just
unit.
trying to be clear about it. So let's see. The entrance to the other unit back there is off of off this public roof deck area, right? Can you show me where that entrance is?
We're at the second floor?
Yeah.
So here's the second floor, and the roof element right under there is where the door is for the second floor unit. And in elevation, just to take it back to the first page, this is the door for the second unit. So you simply walk upstairs and enter into this second unit flat up there, and that's a two-bedroom.
All right. Have the plans been reviewed by the building department at all?
I don't know.
No. What we did ask for was a structural analysis to determine that the walls could remain in place. Because if you reduce or remove more than 50% of the walls, it becomes a complete demolition because the roof has been removed.
I guess I have some questions now.
Okay, because I won't go into detail, but it looks to me like, some basic things might not even meet, basic code requirements, like the bathroom for this unit. Doesn't look to me like that's going to meet minimum dimensions.
It's a duplex, right?
It's existing non-conforming.
There's a lot of existing non-conforming stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have some more questions here.
Okay. Well, let me just finish here. So the that bit on the roof, is that a fireplace chimney?
Yes, sir.
And
We've got one downstairs, just to be clear, in the flat as well. So there's two.
There's
being
two fireplaces.
Being added, correct.
Two fireplaces being added, but
Here's the second one. Sorry, just past.
Okay, but you're required to be. Flue has to terminate 2 foot above any roof surface within 10 feet. So this roof surface is within 10 feet. So the bottom of that flue is going to be up there. This thing's going to have to
It's a
grow.
2 and 10 rule, correct. That's right. I stand
Okay.
corrected.
All right. Okay, go ahead. Howard first.
So is this still questions now, or are you?
Yeah, questions.
Okay. So what is the vintage of these two buildings? When were they built?
I think our archive shows that the 1963, maybe the prior one is older.
So the one in front, at the current time, is a duplex, and it's 2-story, and it has 4 cars in it at the moment.
Four.
There's 4 units.
So there's 6 units total on site.
4 and 2.
Correct.
And in back, it's one over the other?
Correct. Right now it's a studio with 2-bedroom above.
And it is non-conforming as to parking? Existing non-conforming?
Well, that's
No,
debatable.
Mr. Watash, at the time, it was one unit, one parking space per unit, so they have a total of 6.
Right.
Three, I believe, we're providing 4.
Right. So now, in the 60s, this would be, it's structural codes were different. Energy code was not adopted. Are you triggering upgrades of both structure and energy by doing this project?
I would think we'd have to address the full envelope, but we're trying to not trigger the stormwater 3, the underground utilities, the other things that would happen as a result of a rebuild as well.
Okay. So at what point does the structural kick in and you actually get a real assessment of what the upgrade is to make it conform so that it stay within the 50%?
Well, we've done some work to get close to that. I think that
I trust you. I mean, just tell me narrative. I can't read the small
Right.
print.
I missed your question in that. Sorry.
So, if it is to do a structural upgrade with all this stuff up on the second floor and all that, kicks loads into the first floor, kicks loads into the foundation system, you are looking at one huge structural piece, cost component. And so I don't know how the code's written, but it says that whenever the value of the improvements, not so much the floor area, but when the value of the improvements exceed 50% of the replacement value of the house as is, that you go over into this thing of having to comply. And so I just wonder if you have looked at that yet, because if it comes later after the fact, you've built yourself into this plan. I'm wondering whether it'll stay that way. So, bottom line is, you're leaving the front building pretty much the way it is with 4 units in it, and you're really going after the building in the back and enhancing that a lot. And you have a unit on the ground that actually walks up the second floor. Is that right? And you have then a unit on the second floor which walks up to a roof deck. So those two are kind of in that configuration.
But everything walks up to the roof deck. So the 4-plex.
Oh, I see. That's common area.
Access, yeah.
The roof deck is common.
Correct. In every regard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all I have at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I have a question for staff. So let's say that they show up the second floor, and you gave them a building permit, and during the construction, and the whole thing collapsed, and what happened?
Well, that's what the trigger is for the 4 spaces. So that was the original call that Zoni made, that we thought that the building was a complete demo rebuild because of the extent of the work.
Right.
So that's what triggered the reevaluation of the parking, and now you have 4 spaces proposed. So if you go forward with that, you still will meet the parking requirements.
So if let's say if somehow the wall collapsed, then they can rebuild it back to...
No, they'd have to move it over. The minute that wall goes away, they have to move those. They will lose those 6 inches or the 30 square feet.
Okay, so my next question, it seemed to me like you have a staircase, an existing staircase to the second floor now. Why can't it work the way it is? Why you have to add a new staircase in front? Why don't you just leave the staircase the way it is, and that will access the second floor without?
Currently, that staircase encroaches on that ground floor private area, covered private area. So we send people into that private area to access the second floor. We're actually providing an exterior location so they don't encroach.
But it seems like you have a lot of private area down below. Well, it's not private; it's all public spaces.
We've optimized it, certainly.
Yeah, but could it work with the staircase within it, and you don't need the encroachment? Leave the staircase here. Mm-hmm. It doesn't affect the entrance to the first unit. It doesn't affect the entrance to the second unit.
That is correct. I think one of the issues in solving this is that we've got a courtyard that can't be parked. Currently, people park, 2 cars park in that
So
location.
you try doing this so to prevent people from parking?
Well, it announces the ground level with a portal element. That was our idea in creating the projection. But it simply doubles as the accessibility going upstairs as well.
All right, thank you.
If I may also raise a question for Jaime about that second floor wall. I mean, right now it's a 2x4 wall, and it's supporting the rake of a roof that has asphalt shingles on it. The proposal, it's the eave of a tile roof, so it's not going to meet energy codes as it is built. It's going to have to be a 2x6 wall to meet energy codes. It's going to have structural elements in it that it didn't have before, which probably means that in the end, it's going to come down and they're going to rebuild it. So I mean, to say that it's in the same place,
Well,
that might be true. It could be built in the same place, but it's going to be it's going to be a new wall.
and if there's a new wall, it moves over. Same project, but a little bit smaller.
Okay.
So that's really what the dynamic's happening.
But for us to approve it as it is, just seems kind of farcical to me to approve
Well,
it as it is.
this is the time. This is the time to bring your comments forward. The staff hearing officer will consider your
Okay.
doubts, your concerns,
All
and whether you're lacking support of any areas.
All right. So comments from the board. Tip.
I personally find this project is very challenging to build, almost to the point of I don't want to say impossible, but it's almost reaching that, or the cost will be prohibitively too expensive. That at the end of the day, it will get sent back or get stuck someplace. I'm also have concern about the roof deck. I think that if it goes ahead, I prefer to the applicant to ask for another modification and get rid of it. It just seemed like a lot of work once again to add a tower, a fireplace, and access to it with the stairs that 8 to 12 or 9 to 12 to reach up there to comply to one of the zoning issues. And the last thing had to do with the new staircase. The way I look at the drawings, it probably could work without adding a new staircase and save that space for landscaping. Personally, I don't see the need for a new staircase coming up in that location. So, but overall, I just have a hard time convincing myself that this is a feasible project.
Okay. So do you think it's unsupportable because of that, or what?
Yeah, based on what I know of working with the structural engineer and try to do what the applicant tried to do here, I just feel like by the time, of course, if you throw enough money at something, it will work. Mm-hmm. But by the end, you're doing all of that. I'm just questioning if the owner is willing to go ahead. And if the applicant wants to go this route, I almost recommend that besides a couple comments, that go and do the complete structural engineering drawing and see if it's feasible or not. I'm not even sure it's feasible.
Okay. Scott.
I'm going to review it under the assumption that it is feasible. I think you can solve just about anything with enough steel. Mm-hmm. So given that, I mean, your task was to kind of take this building in the back and transform it into something Spanish and attractive. And I think to that extent, you've largely succeeded. I think the transformation is pretty nice in terms of the new design and there's some nice features. But I think you did that at the expense of the floor plans, which I find are difficult. Particularly that studio unit with the little TV viewing thing on the ground floor and then the deck up above, which creates kind of an L-shaped plan for the one unit. What I think may make the project more successful is to have one unit on the ground floor, one unit on the upper floor, and maybe make a pathway to the laundry room that isn't going around everyone's units at the back. I think it would be a much more successful project. And maybe you had to do what you did to kind of get the architectural design to work out, to get more mass on the second floor, to get the roofs to work. There's probably a reason why the way it is, which I may not be entirely aware of. But I do think it makes the floor plans contorted and less desirable for future tenants. I'd like to see you go back and study that. I would, for starters, I don't mind the new courtyard and the staircase where it is. I think the entrance to this unit on the ground floor is, I know you have an arch here, but it's a little circuitous and hard to find. And then you also have an entrance up on the second floor. I find it convoluted. And then walking to the laundry room is really circuitous in the back here, and you've got a lot of covered deck back here, which kind of leaves me scratching my head. I think there's probably too much railing around the back. I think you could eliminate some or even break the railing so it's less contiguous, and so it feels more like two balconies rather than it's continuous railing around the back. I think the staircase to the roof, if you're going to keep that, I think it wants to be up at the front. So you'd go from one staircase and then make a turn and then maybe start up the next staircase. If this is a unit, you don't really, well, you do have a window here, but that could just be open stair since this unit is kind of looking at it that way. Those would be my main comments. I'm not sure if the moves made at the front building really help all that much. Maybe it just stays what it is and you have two different styles. I think half measure tying that in probably isn't really enough to carry the day. It makes the existing 60s buildings look stylistically a little odd to have the two things going on. So maybe you just keep that. I mean, it's not an outstanding building of its style, but maybe you just keep it stylistically whole would be my recommendation. But I like some of the moves on the elevation. I think there's some charm happening here. I think the plan needs a lot of work. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. So we also, if I could, before we go through all the comments and then ask this question, Mr. Lamone, do we need to comment specifically on the zoning modifications related to building separation and open yard requirements?
Yes, similar to whether you support the mods or the elements that are being proposed.
And just to be clear about what those mods are, related to building separation, so there should be
15 feet.
15, and we've got 11.6.
Which points to the question Tip raises, should the stairway be there?
Yeah. And then the open yard issue has to do with that the open yard is being provided at the third floor deck, and it doesn't meet the 20 by 20.
On the ground floor.
Even at the
On the
upper floor.
Upper floor it does.
Does it make?
No, it does. You are going to have 20 by 20.
Yes. Okay, all right. So do you want to comment specifically on those mods? Sure. Can you support those mods? That's what I'm trying to get at.
I can support the mods. The reason being that the staircase is not a complete structure, and it adds a level of hierarchy to that elevation, which it didn't previously have.
Okay. Courtney.
I guess I agree with Scott. I'm going to defer to my colleagues on the architectural comments, but the landscape, is not very far along yet, so I appreciate the moves that have been made at the front of the property. I would like to see some photo documentation of the existing oak or an arborist report so that we can understand, whether it's been assessed and what kind of shape it's in. Regarding the mods, I think they're acceptable. I think the floor plans need some work. And there are potentially some other issues that may prevent this from moving forward the way that it is. So I think Amy's questions pointing to some of the screening on, I think it was this property line, are prudent. So look forward for more detail on the landscape plan in that area to address screening. And, I think Scott's comments related to wayfinding and how someone who lives in the back unit and or is visiting would find their way back to that front door is important. So take a look at the hardscape design and how that's addressed through the driveway. And, you know, we'll be looking for more detail on how that's going to work. And that's it.
I think on
Amy, sorry.
That's
Go ahead.
okay. I guess on a whole, there's the structural comments, which I agree with, that Tip brought up, just especially the change in roof material and adding the roof deck up there. But overall, I think the plans are somewhat confusing as far as like circulation and how everything really relates to one another and how you move through the property. And I guess it would be something to look at is a more delineation between like the private space and the public space and how you can really separate it and not have, you know, especially with the relationship between like the laundry room downstairs and that downstairs unit. I think the comment about having one unit on the ground floor and one on the second floor might help. But I think also the public open space needs to be sort of addressed, because I don't know if that roof deck will, you know, having that be used by everybody that lives there is going to work out the best. In the comment that Kirk brought up, as far as like your chimney is going to be a lot higher than what you're currently showing, so that's going to affect the design also. So I think just overall, like a more cohesive plan and how you can move through it. And if you're not going to address the front building, like architecturally, I agree, like to not add the few things that you did to keep it separate, if that, you know, that ultimately that is the goal. And then also the privacy on that second floor on the south elevation. It's not really showing right now what you talked about, a few things that you could do, but it'd be helpful to actually see that and see an elevation of how that would look, because I think it probably is going to be an issue. Everything's pretty close together in the back there. So I think as far as the modifications, I think the way that it's laid out right now, I wouldn't be able to support it, mainly with the stair being so close to that front building, but also having that roof deck part of the open space. I don't think it works. So.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Howard?
I pretty much agree with Scott, Tip, Scott, and Amy. No disrespect.
Okay.
Really. But I think the really important issue is this public-private space ratio and the paths of travel through where private space becomes violated by members of the public trying to get to their common areas and crossing in front of, you know, space that is really private. And I think that needs study. And I also think that the unit in the back has things that are charming. I like it, but it's too busy, and it's unfortunate that all the money is going to go into that building and nothing into the building in front, so that you're going to have kind of a passé building as time has passed in front, and especially with the vinyl windows, and this other building in back, which is, you know, aspiring to something. So I would tend to maybe simplify the one in back and maybe take some of that money, put it into the front, so that you have a property that looks like it has the same vintage. I would not be able to support the modification to reduce the 15-foot space between the buildings for that public stair. I think that public stair has another place on the property where it can be placed. Those are pretty much, so I agree with pretty much what everyone else has said.
Okay, I'll make my comments brief also. The way I see it is we've got 1,500 square feet of habitable space in that back building, and a 4-car garage, and a lot of covered deck, and a roof deck, and a lot of stairways and stuff going on, but we've only got 1,500 square feet of habitable space, and that you could fit, like right there. So to me, it's the non-habitable areas and passageways and pathways and stairways are making the mass, bulk, and scale of that back building something that simply doesn't need to be. So I think for that reason, and to really make viable common open space for 6 units, including the guy that's up at the front, I don't think that's a viable space right back there. I think along with all the other issues mentioned, that's kind of the core problem I see. So how many board members can support the modifications as proposed?
How many?
2. How many board members are opposed to the 3rd floor deck being utilized as to meet the open yard requirement? So I'm going to separate the 2 modifications. The first, the open yard one. How many board members feel like the 3rd floor deck is not satisfactorily meeting because of the architectural gymnastics it creates, does not satisfactorily meet the open yard requirement?
I mean, the common.
You kind of conflated the 2 different issues there.
Did I?
I mean, one is the approach to it, I think, doesn't work. But just
that's part of, to me, that's part of it, because you can't have the deck without the approach.
But I think the approach could be fixed.
Okay, all right. Well, let's say in its present configuration then.
Okay.
So
we're not.
how many can support the 3rd floor deck as proposed?
The way
the way it's designed, including its access. We have anyone who can support that?
And I want to say one thing.
Was it 0?
That's 0.
The only reason I'm opposing it because I think that's the less expensive way to do it without providing it. That's why I'm opposing it.
Okay.
I think the
Not because I
applicant
don't
showed
like it.
that it wouldn't fit between the buildings. There wasn't
So
an
can
acceptable
we
way to
ask
get it.
another question? I understand about using the 3rd space as a common open area with a problematic access, but is everybody on board to have the open space for the common for 6 units on the 3rd floor of a building that has 2 private units underneath? I mean, is
that's to me is also problematic.
That's a problematic area. It's another question.
Mr. Chair,
whether
you can send direction to the staff hearing officer that they support a reduced open yard not involving a roof deck.
Yeah, I would really
I mean, that's
support
what
that.
I'm hearing, that somehow that might be the better solution, not providing it up there at all.
I think so.
So that would be my point, and I would.
Okay, so how many board members could support sending a direction to the staff hearing officer to provide a reduced open yard requirement at the ground level
On the ground.
that makes sense, as opposed to the 3rd floor deck?
In lieu of the deck.
I would
In lieu
do
of the
that.
deck.
I could do that.
Okay, so we've got 5. Yeah. Okay, and then I think that, to me, it looks like the logical place for it, and maybe the only place, given the current building configuration, is right there, right where you have that stair. So if you can...
You're going to do that, the stairs got to move.
Very logical there. Yeah.
So, and then that eliminates looks like it would eliminate the building separation problem.
Right.
So there you go. That seems like an easy answer to me. I also feel like that the wall, especially, that you're now going to be supporting a roof deck, parapet wall, tile roof, eave on this, existing 2x4 wall. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to fly. It's going to end up being taken down. Besides having to have steel on it underneath it, which can't even, it's going to be gymnastics, even to support a 2x6 wall there. So I don't think that that's really viable myself, to show that as an existing wall to remain.
I agree.
And the impetus for keeping that wall is to keep the garage width, otherwise they lose width in the garage?
I don't know.
No.
It's because
It's
Go ahead.
actually not triggering 4 spaces. So he could have come back with 2 spaces and argued that it's not a complete demo. So he's anticipating that there may be, in fact, a demo.
Okay.
He does not want to move the second floor wall
Right.
over 1 foot
Right.
because of that, of wanting.
Loss of square footage. So you might see a revised design when it comes back. We don't know yet. We'll talk to the applicant.
And then I think the other big issue is whether, the design of 2 major significant buildings on the same site can look so different. And it sounds like some board members are okay with that, so maybe we should just take that as a straw vote too. How many board members are okay with the building style that proposed being so different from the front building?
Okay with it?
Yeah, or find it acceptable that the back building is so different from the front building?
It's a much better looking building in the back.
Yeah.
So what is that, 4-2?
Mm-hmm.
Opposed, yeah.
Yeah.
No, 4.
4 to 2 opposed to the current
Being different.
differences between the front and the rear building. And I don't know how you make them, what the answer is there, but to me it seems incongruous. And we always, we've done it again and again and again on this board. I've seen it, for 25 years, that if you have a small building in the front and you're going to do a new building in the back, you make it match the front building if it's a nice building.
It's a nice building.
Yeah. So what do you do if the front building's not a nice building? You don't want to match the ugly building.
I guess driving down the city streets of Santa Barbara, you see houses very stylistically different, much closer than these 2 buildings are. They're not on the same site. Maybe that's a factor, but
It's true. It's
They're
true,
not in
but the impact to the public, I guess this is to me what it comes down to, is the impact to the public at the street is the improvements being made there could be upgraded. I guess that's what I would say. But not sure how to word that. I think
About the stylistic thing?
yeah. You have any thoughts?
Well, I think you said it well. It took a straw vote, and a majority of the board is opposed to the buildings being dissimilar architecturally. Or dissimilar. You don't have to use the word incompatible, just dissimilar.
Yeah, but would we find an acceptable proposal if he matched the back building to the front building? I wouldn't.
You'd have to see it, but there's.
I might change I think I need to change my vote on the last one, because I think from what I had mentioned, they are 2 different buildings, and if he's not going to really upgrade the front one, I think adding a few things wouldn't really cut it. So like leaving the front building alone and just working on the back building, but making a cohesive like site design would be, that's a separate issue, but
Well, I think we should leave it to the
I
applicant.
think that can be
Here's
different.
one way to state it, possibly, is that the front build, the street-facing portions of the front building should be upgraded to match the quality of what's being proposed in the back.
I
How's that?
disagree with that. That doesn't. That's very dangerous. You get into makeup and façadery and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't want just the front portion.
Okay, how about this?
I would just
Okay.
leave
Can I
it.
have a suggestion?
Yes.
My recommendation for the applicant to return to the board with a design that, the design for the back that acceptable to work with the site for the with the front building, because I mean, even the style can be a little different, but it could be the same vernacular element. Doesn't have to be completely. So just return with a design that unified the back building to the front building.
Make them the two more,
More compatible.
so less fancy stuff in the back.
Yeah, and
I could support
he's the
that.
designer, not us.
Yeah, I could support.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I'm not understanding. So we're making the back building kind of a 60s building to match the front?
Which nothing wrong with 60 building.
No,
is
I'm
done
not saying.
properly,
I'm just, that's the what's on the table.
Well, it doesn't have to be Spanish.
Well,
No, it doesn't.
Well, can we leave it, maybe the applicant would like to talk about this to his client and say, okay, so they want the two buildings to be compatible. Either we go to the 60s or we go to the Spanish.
how about if we just say
Make
in
them
very general
compatible.
that the two buildings need to be more compatible?
Compatible. Exactly.
Okay,
And there might be ways more that he could do the front building to make it more compatible with the back, right?
I think that leaves greatest amount of flexibility.
Okay, all right. So the motion would be an indefinite continuance. And I'm assuming that the applicant would not want to go to the staff hearing officer without making changes to the plan.
Can I comment? Well, I think, just to be clear before you make a motion here, that you understand the constraints of the site plan and the nature of the existing non-conforming spaces, which we haven't changed. You have some really valid comments with regard to those, but none of those are any different than they are existing.
Right,
And they
we
can't
understand
be.
it.
It's an
We understand
over-densified
the
R2
project.
site. So how can any of that change from what it is? It can't, and yet you're commenting on changing it.
Okay.
So I'm not quite clear on the direction, if the direction is change the densification, which is unchangeable. Am I inaccurate in that assumption?
What I heard is restudy the floor plans and maybe keep the configuration more consistent with what it is now. So you'll leave
I hear that clearly, the aesthetic issue. I clearly hear that. But the nature of the studio down there can't be increased, or it can be increased, but it can't be left as it is, because that's not what I was hired to do. I was hired to make it a one-bedroom, not leave it as a studio.
Well, you need to go back to your client and explain to him our concerns. And we're going to try and make it as clear as possible.
But mass bulk and scale, how does that affect?
I think you would take some mass from the second floor and put it on the first floor and separate those two units.
That's what we've done.
And you would eliminate the roof deck and put the common area on the floor.
And just to reiterate the roof deck primarily originally was only for the duplex. Through the city, we made it universally accessible for the.
But you're not meeting the site requirements.
But in lieu of doesn't solve the client's request for a roof deck.
I mean, I think you
Take
probably
that
still
back.
have a roof deck. It doesn't need to be 20 by 20 anymore.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And common doesn't need to be common either, which is part of the contortion of all the stairways.
Okay.
And I think there's some study with the circulation there to getting up to this roof deck, and it may be that your client can't have what he wants. I mean, it's sorry to have that go on the air, but that is, sometimes there are things that just are not, they're not possible.
Well, what precludes it in your mind?
Okay, we're done with that part of the discussion, and
Well,
we're
the-
trying to make a motion now.
Okay, but I want to say there are just two mods, right?
Yep.
One is the stair and the 15-foot between buildings, and the other one is this wall.
Roof deck as open yard.
Deck is open.
That's a required
and the
open yard.
wall 1 foot
Wall's
closer
not a
to
mod.
The wall's not a
The
mod.
mod.
No, that's just there.
Because it exists.
Oh, I see. That's a
Quote,
code
unquote.
exemption.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Got it.
So the motion would be indefinite continuance back to the full board with the following comments: that board cannot support the current design of the third floor roof deck as a viable common open space, and recommends that the open space be provided at the ground floor between the buildings. this would also eliminate the second modification of the not meeting building separation.
Do you want to add a board would support less than 20 by 20?
Sure. The board, yeah, so the board, this is part of the same comment.
Board would what?
Support a less than 20 by 20 square foot open yard area.
Okay. On the ground, though.
On the ground.
Yeah. I would say that the mass bulk and scale of the rear building is not acceptable as designed. And also that the front building, that the two buildings, the front building and the rear, need to be more compatible in their
Style.
style, more compatible in style. Does anyone want to second that or comment or
Second.
add? Seconded by Tip.
Under discussion,
Yes.
just to really look at or study the delineation between the private and public space,
Yeah.
and also just the circulation through the site.
We can add those.
Study site circulation, and what was the other one?
Just the delineation between private and public space, or private and shared space.
We add one more, a more direct route to the public laundry room.
Did you open public comment?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
And
Mr. Chair. To the laundry.
Hold on. Look.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, she got that. Okay. Go ahead.
just to study the privacy issue on the second floor of the back building on the south elevation.
Well, I thought that was kind of included in your comment about
You already
public
covered
and
that.
private. Isn't that
Circulation.
kind of what you're getting at there?
Yeah, I guess that's it's public and private within the site, but then there's the privacy issue between this property and the property next to it.
Oh, the screening.
The screening
Oh, yeah.
on the south elevation.
Yes, verify adequate screening to the neighbor to the south from the rear building.
Yeah.
And we could also add, provide photographic documentation of neighboring buildings
And the existing oak tree.
and the existing oak tree. Oh, that was another comment I had I forgot to include. Because it looked to me like there's a bunch of space here that could be planting that you're showing as paved area. This is your driveway, right? You've got a very long driveway and you're paving. Do you need to go?
Backup space?
Huh?
Is it backup space?
So let's, we'll add one more comment. Study the proposed paved driving and pedestrian area to add more planters, actual planters. So we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
So you take one, we keep the rest. Oh, no, we keep one, you take the rest. That's your.
Yep.
On to item 3, 6100 Becknell Road.
Very fine hand here.
Photos? Greg, did you take the photos or under that? Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
you.
You're stepping down. This is a proposal to construct a new facility for direct relief.
We have color. Are they the same?
Yeah, just color. We just didn't have time to color render them.
And we last reviewed this in July. This is a warehouse, a large warehouse, 127,706 square feet with an attached two-story, 27,294 square foot administrative office building, secure truck loading area, and 162 parking spaces. And
This project received designation as community benefit
Very much.
with an allocation of 80,000 square feet of non-residential floor area from the community benefit category.
This is about colors today. Is that the thrust of the presentation?
Well, the-
Colors, as well as we have some additional details that you requested on
Yes.
the awnings
Okay,
and
very good.
trellises.
Yep. I should get my hands on the comments we had. Susan, do we have the comments from last time, please? Thank you. Our comments from last time, July 18th. The motion was project design approval and continued indefinitely to in-progress review with the following. Number one, provide 1/8-inch scale elevations at the next review and include preliminary conceptual drawings of details, including roof edges, trellises, and windows. Number two, study enhancements to the trellis and gate detailing. Number three, study means of adding texture or a varied finish, as well as lighter colors for the warehouse field color. Number four, study deepening the canopies by 8 to 10 inches. Number five, where planting occurs adjacent to the building, study adding shrubs that grow to a minimum of 6 feet, preferably 8 to 10 feet at maturity. Number six, study judicious placement of altering parapet heights to break up the length of the building. And number seven was one board member felt the color selection for the main entrance of the building should be refined. It's a 4-0 vote.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Michelle Sonnets. I'm the Senior Director of Projects at DMHA. So on our first items, if you go to sheet A209, or 2.9, I believe, we've got the 8-scale elevations added for you now, which gives a good feel for the detail.
2.4.
2 point what?
2.4, sorry. I had on my notes, but that was for another item. So yeah, we've blown up our elevations to 8 scale, so it gives you a better feel for the detail. We've rendered the first page to show our colors, and then the other pages were just the CAD elevations. To address the colors, we went over several color variations with the client, and they felt pretty strongly about having the white, the 2 white blocks and not adding a third color. They felt it got too busy. So we've kind of kept with that, that same direction there. However, one of the items on the color was there was concern about the warehouse building being too dark, so we did go a shade lighter on the warehouse building, and I do have some bigger color samples, which might help. Do you see that? And so what we've got is that for the field, and then where we have our insets with the rib texture would be the darker. In addition, we're considering having this texture would be in with the ribs. So we really like the idea of the field of the warehouse being a nice smooth finish because it is concrete and we like that feel. But having these inset panels be the textured finish with the ribbed form liner. So, in addition, we have added one of the colors that we did not have before was our color that we had for the metal of the trellises and the awnings, which we'll go into the details a little bit more, but we've wanted it to kind of speak to the natural rust color that is going to be on the reed screen wall elements and gates, but we didn't want rust obviously on the building because of dripping and that, so this is our proposed color for that, those metal elements. And then, yes, there's the natural rust that we had discussed last time with the screen wall elements. So those are our color proposals. On the detailing for the awnings and trellises, I believe the trellis is on A 2.8. So the comment was made, I believe, last time to make the trellises a little more, not as simple and more artisanal. So what we've done is we've kind of tried to go play back to that idea of the reeds on the trellises, like we had on the awnings and the reeds on the screen walls. And we've added some tube steels just throughout the top of the, on top of the rafters of the trellis, which you can see gives it a really nice playful shadow pattern. And we wanted to mix the, I think in the last presentation when we did the digital presentation, and I have enough of these for all of you to look at as well. When we had the digital presentation as well, we had talked about our idea for these reeds and canopies really came from the Presidio. And so we're trying to, there's a historic basis for it, but we really want it to be clean and modern at the same time. So we're trying to find that fine line. So with this trellis element, we're trying to go back to this playfulness, but still have some clean modern lines and not be really, as fussy. So, in addition, if you turn to page A2.9, we have some additional detailing on the canopies. The comment was to make them wider, so we did. We widened them to 5'2", and there'll be some bearing in the tube steel along there to get those, again, those interesting shadow lines we're looking for on the building. And we'll have about 18-inch cantilever of those tubes, again, going back to this imagery of wanting those fun shadow lines on the project. On detail 1 and 2, you'll see our continued evolution of the screen walls. What we have here, and I apologize, this detail, we missed this when I was looking at the PDF, but these backs would be the supports behind here. So this whole piece, each one of these screens will be made in a 4-foot section and then cast into the concrete footing and with concrete poured around it. But in the back, there's going to be these crossing supports that each one of these tubes that are going to go in and out and left and right to create that reed pattern will be welded off to. So these kind of are the back crossing supports. So they're really behind. They're not really going to be the main focus. They kind of will be back behind, as well as the idea, and it didn't come across on this CAD thing, is that those crossing supports will have a little bit of curve to them, so that it has, if you look at a picture, and I think there may be one in here, of our inspirational imagery with the reeds. There. And the Goleta Sulu is that even though most of the reeds are always going in the same direction, there is usually like one or two that kind of does its own thing. So that's kind of the idea behind these crossing supports, that they will be going off to provide support, but also just kind of to play to that one reed that kind of tends to do its own thing.
So would this just repeat, mirror?
Yeah. And our feeling is that this is really going to be built by a custom, gate, ironwork person, and it's really going to be a piece of art. It's not going to be a, rigid thing. They're all going to be unique and individual. But yes, there will be 4-foot sections that have one of these crossing supports, and again, the intermediate reeds will go in and out and up and down in height, and vary from a thicker reed to being thinner. And I think we've said here that the the bigger reeds will have some of the fatter will be like only 5% of the reeds that are in there, and the rest will be the thinner. So we want a little pop of thickness, and the rest will be thinner. So that's what we have as far as our details for the trellises and the awnings. The other comments that were made about studying the parapet height and breaking up of the parapet height. We did study it, but unfortunately due to direct relief's interior requirements of clear height of their racking and what we need for structure, and then the max building height on the exterior for the site, we have like no wiggle room, and we were fighting it. Everything we looked at it looked forced. And then we also felt that if we go back to the overall elevation here, looking at this, the randomness of the score patterns, when you started creating, when this wasn't a clean straight line, it kind of took away from what we were trying to do with the randomness of the score patterns. So we really liked the nice clean lines, especially considering we didn't have enough room to really make a good difference in the parapet height based on all the constraints we have.
Are these joint lines?
Yes, those are the panel joints that are a 1-inch panel joint. Each panel is 18 feet wide with the 1-inch joint.
The horizontals will match the vertical? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
That's just a score line, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the ones going in this direction are vertical, and then these would be your panel joints.
This is kind of interesting. This is that Vega building, which is probably one of the nicer tilt-up buildings that we've seen. That has the panel joints matching the other ones. It becomes a nice little architectural. And that you asked us to study the edges, and we're kind of looking at the chamfered edges and the top details too, which we even measured those, so they're about a 1-inch. This is kind of what we're looking for, kind of clean and minimal, but not too much.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's kind of the pieces we have today based on those comments.
Okay. So we'll open up public comment. Seeing no one, we'll go to questions from the board. Chip?
No comment.
Nope, no questions, no comments. Okay, Scott?
No comments.
A couple questions. Is this painted blue, or is that just for what's going on there?
It's because it's kind of what we're trying to show is that set back, and so really it's the sky.
Okay.
That's
how far back is it set?
It is. Let's see, what's our width of the building? It's the whole width of the office building. Okay. So that's yeah. So yeah, it might be. I think that's maybe a little deceptive, but what we're trying to show in the rendering is that this office piece is going to stick out in front of the bigger kind of. Michael likes to call it the mothership, the warehouse building. So.
Okay. And the wall in front of the tilt-up, is that a different color?
Yeah, so our site walls, we've gone with a different color. We've gone with this a little bit darker color. We think it will be a nice contrast with Courtney's landscape planning. You get the nice sage greens and agave greens, and that in front of this dark color will create a nice contrast.
I rather like the color difference here. I'm just wondering if that's going to read as well as it kind of does in the drawings. Have you considered making those a slightly darker color? Or?
Oh, that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay. Oh, it is that way.
It is. So this is yeah. So this
okay.
is the field color, and then this is those insets.
Okay.
So in addition to that being darker, with that being the ribbed, you're going to get shadow lines, and that's going to make it look nice, deep, rich color that we were.
It has a different texture.
Yeah. Right, and it has texture.
This was to mimic the light sandblasting texture. So what we wanted to do with this was, this is the clean, finished concrete panel, and it looks really nice when you get the sun on it. And then this would be the ribbed with a slight sandblast, which is something like this, but then painted the darker color. So, because you guys asked us to do as much as you can. So given the budget of the project, this was, playing with the skin. We think the subtleties will look nice. So, but those are the colors exactly. Otherwise, it'd look pretty much the same. So we've kind of like that pattern.
Gotcha. This is a steel fascia and steel spandrel of
Yeah.
some sort?
Yeah, so this is brake metal to match the storefront. You've got the storefront color right here for you. And this is actually going to be an Alucobond panel that will be much more towards these warm tones.
That was it. Thank you.
Questions?
The only question is on the larger trellises, because you have the ones that are coming out over the windows are pretty dense, the tubes. Did you look at adding some more like denseness, I guess, to the larger ones?
We did not look at that. I think we were trying to be minimalist on that. Again, we're trying to find a balance between having the playfulness of the reeds, but also keep it a modern interpretation. It could be something interesting to look at.
This is kind of the 3D model, the Revit model, sort of where that plays out. So you can see that, but it creates some pretty nice. There you go. That's what it looks like underneath. So we got a mixture of 1-inch, 2-inch, and 3-inch rods that are mimicking the reeds, and so they wanted a little bit of shade in there, but not totally. And we kind of like it that you don't want this as shaded as the window shade. So, and remember we originally had a canvas awning there, so this is more of an arbor, and those were sort of more shades. So we felt like that's kind of a nice, complementary use of that shading.
You said arbor. Is there going to be planting on? Are there vines or anything on
no,
there?
on the trellises, I believe we've kind of wanted to steer clear
Keep it clean.
Yeah.
Okay. That was all.
Howard?
No questions.
Okay. Still no comments, Chip?
Well, you have any questions? No?
No, I don't have any
Okay, of comments now?
comments, yeah.
I'm fine with the way I feel a little more comfortable with how the colors, selection, the detail turn out. I think it'll be a nice, big complex. So I can support it.
Okay, good. Scott?
For what it is, a big tilt-up warehouse, it's done very, very nicely.
Thank you.
Really superb. I like the detailing. I like trellis and the ironwork. Very nice. I can support the project.
Thank you.
Colors look good.
Amy?
Yeah, I agree. Like the project, I like all the textures and the color palette. I think look nice together. I do think on that south elevation you should shade in the building to be more gray because it's a little misleading.
I can fix that.
Just because this is actually the building. But other than that, I think it's a nice project.
Howard?
I would agree. I do have a couple of little comments. In this ironwork in front, this arbor, I like the randomly placed round reeds. But I think the intermediate rails between the reeds and the big one seem to be too many and too small. I would probably eliminate every other one and increase the height a little bit so that it has a proportion as a layered trellis. And you could increase the number of reeds in there to kind of give it a little more feeling. I have a different thought on the corrugated panels that are part of the tilt-up. I have found that when you have a surface and you choose areas in which to disturb the surface, you actually don't have to add a color because the disturbed surface, which would be the corrugated, will do its own darkening. And what it has the effect of is the effect of a stone and water in which you have the same material, but it just, the ripples change things. And that, since you are drawing all your references from reeds and water and aquatic references and so forth, it might seem that the extra color is not necessary. Consider. Cheaper, too.
Well, I was going to say that that seemed a little bit dark still, given what is shown and the texture that you're providing. But it's still acceptable to me. I just think it could be more subtle than what's being shown there. So, who would like to make a motion?
Is this a final approval?
No, this is in progress review.
Progress.
In progress.
review.
We're coming back in 2 weeks, hopefully for
Yeah,
final.
2 weeks.
Well,
Okay.
then I don't think we need to make a motion. We just come back, continue, come back in.
Well, we do need to make a motion. We always,
So
we
is
always
this-
For
do,
final, right?
unless it's.
Do you want to come back in 2 weeks? Are you going to be ready?
We're coming back for final in 2 weeks is what we'd like to be here.
So it would
Do
be,
it? I'll make a motion.
okay,
Or
go ahead.
For
This is-
2-week continuance for the applicant to return in 2 weeks for final approval.
Well, I would recommend you add something like that the changes made to the plans and color board since the last review are acceptable.
So made.
Okay.
With the comments to maybe study the spacing of railings and the proportion of.
Yeah, that's, I wanted to show you that.
Yeah. That's
Good comment, though.
Second?
Okay.
Seconded by Tip. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice project.
Yeah, it's good. I think it doesn't need to be that consistent. That's actually the
fluorescent
next
lights.
level.
Yeah, you know, all these colors are much better in daylight, and this is the
your
same color,
photographs of
but
the,
it looks a little bit different, but
Maybe
yeah.
it's better outside.
We've looked at it a lot of different ways.
So, for discussion on this item,
Yes.
we have 2 of you that are going to be absent. So we will just have quorum, and if one person is sick, then the meeting will be canceled, so just to let you know.
Come next week.
Can't leave.
In 2 weeks?
That's your the wild card, you know it.
What is that, the 29th?
Do we keep this, Susan, or do they?
Yeah, I think you guys keep these, right?
Yes.
We just borrowed them back. Thank you so much. Really,
Thank you.
Your comments have made the project a lot better, so I mean, I
a
think
nice
it's
project,
been very good.
So we keep one, you guys take.
Yeah, you guys keep this one, I think.
No, we have.
And you get one of those booklets. Oh, you got one? You take this one. One booklet and this.
So we're on to item 4, 3880 State Street. This is a final review being requested.
Review after final.
Review after final.
Right. Proposal to construct 13 new apartment units in a 13,323 square foot 2-story building.
Yeah.
Yes. Review after final changes in approved roofing materials
That's what you're looking
from two-piece mission tile to S tile.
Oops.
Ooh, deadly.
See this? This is my hat in hand. I hope your hat's going to be reasonable. Wear a reasonable hat. So, Richard Six, LMA Architects, and this is Eric Lundquist, the contractor, builder extraordinaire. About after the building permit, this particular project was so burdened with expenses beyond just building apartments, ADA and SWIMP and so forth. We did some budget crunches, and we had a meeting that said, substitute with S-Tile. Eric came away from that meeting with, yes, that's a go. I came away from that meeting, well, maybe we'll look at it and see. Next time I saw the mission tile, it was up on the roof stacked with S-tile. So there was no communication and so forth. So it's our error. However, we feel that there are a number of extenuating circumstances that, if
Make it
you're
acceptable.
reasonable, make it acceptable.
Okay.
So number one, it's not on State Street. It's clear back in the, where Samita Nursery used to be, in back of Chuck's.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So,
Street's called Via Lucero. It's
So it's-
actually not a well-traveled street at all. Car goes by every 10 minutes or something.
it also is in the neighborhood of built-up roofs and the Pepper Tree Inn. Here it is. Let's look at this. So our plans did have the full mission tile on them. What we came out of the meeting with was doing the mission tile, the S tile in the field, the full full barrel on the rakes, on the eaves, booster, the full thing, and then boosters in the middle. So you know, the roofer that is doing this particular job happens to have just had one done up on Lincoln Drive, which I think has a nice rusticated look. It has, he would use the same ratio of boosters in the field. Our project, again, is in back, is not right against State Street.
Show us the site plan?
Yeah.
Or you can recall what we let you build. Gave you permission.
No, we gave you permission to do. I do not have a good overall site plan.
That's good enough.
So here's the site plan. Here's State Street here. Chuck's is right here. And the building is back in here.
Okay.
And this is Missouri.
There is a driveway from State going back, right?
Driveway from State.
Yeah.
Do we have the photos on this?
Yeah.
So we get a...
You know what? No, we don't, because isn't this one that had C of O? Didn't it have C of O already? This is a, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Yeah, there are photos here.
So I apologize. You have them or not?
Sorry, yes,
So here's my photo dossier. Here's State Street. Chuck's is right here. There's a drive coming up here. So number 5, we start at number 5. So this is, you know, right about here. There's this driveway coming up this way. So you just begin. I don't think we don't see the project yet until we're midway down the site. So we begin to see peaks of it as we're here after the mid parking lot at between Chuck's and Hans 3886 building. And then number 7, this is in, now we are in the parking lot here looking toward this wing of it. And then this is along Via Zorro. I mean, Via Lucero looking this way.
Are these examples of other S-tiles in the area?
No, this is the photo essay of,
In those photos there are.
of the buildings. So this is coming up Via Lucero, sequenced. We see a little bit of it on number 2. We see, as you see, where the building's quite high and the tiles are not right at eye level.
The whole, everything is 2-story other than one element that's low, and I would be happy to put regular 2-piece tile on that low element. But everything is on the 2nd story. So when you look at the eaves, I mean, you really see the 2-piece starters that we will put on.
Is it a triple booster course at the starter, or what is it? What is it at the starter?
It would be a double.
A double.
Booster, yeah.
And is it mortared?
Yeah. So, and then the adjacent buildings are, there's this.
That's a fibrous sort of material that I think they did because they didn't have the structure to put on a real
DoubleTree in
tile roof.
And then we have
which is visible from State Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's way.
So it's not one of those prime areas. It has its, the area is eclectic.
What is the one area, the one-story area roof that you're saying you can?
Well, it's
right underneath here. Oh, I know. Here, I can show it to you. Right.
It's our electrical closet that's down low.
It's very small, very, very small right there.
But it's still very visible too.
When we've made great efforts, we've got the full scalloped gabled ends. We have made great efforts to put all of our vents and so forth in decorative. There's a shroud, of course, that goes over here. So
we have no plumbing vents sticking up through the roof. We've went to a lot of effort.
It's a quality building, and I don't in a eclectic area, and we're hoping that we can have a reasonable outcome here and look. I know what your rules are, but in this situation, I think there's enough extenuating circumstances that.
Can we go to public comment?
This one, yeah, sure. So we're open to public comment. Would anyone like to comment on this project? No. So we'll go to questions from the board. Go ahead, Tip.
I have no questions.
Scott.
The S-tile and the C-tile match with the same family, same color blend?
Yes.
Okay.
It's already on the roof. And
Same U.S. tile.
Yeah.
Amy, any questions?
No.
Howard? How about field boosters? What is the prescription?
This is what we have. This same roofer is going to be doing the job.
So is it? Can you tell me what it is? Because it's like 15, 20%.
I don't know.
Booster tile.
We only put about 4 in per square when we've done this in the past. Seems to be the best look. I mean, it can get to be a little bit sloppy looking if you put too many boosters in. I know you guys have some guidelines somewhere. This is quite a few boosters in this one.
I was going to count them for you, but
more so than I would recommend, actually.
Leaving nothing to chance.
We could count those and see, or ask the roofer what he did.
Mm-hmm. Is everything you've described notated in this drawing set here?
I think so, yeah. No, I haven't changed my drawings yet, so we're trying to get your nod here. That's all I've done.
Okay.
So, two-piece S-tile acceptees, boosters, wrappers and hips, and to be two-piece.
So in
And
addition,
I haven't specified the booster ratio yet in the field, but can articulate that.
I think the way this is done, it is pretty nice. But you could see they made efforts to not have the clean alignment. These things are not only boosted, but they're also wiggling around.
Yeah, I like
so,
the
I mean, if he
look.
can,
do you like it?
Yes, I do. Because the more uniform it looks, the more plastic it looks, and then with uniformity of color, it just loses its texture and interest. That's my view on it.
I like the wiggle as well.
See. So, comments. Tip.
Well, I'm definitely fine with substitution because the location of the building and the way that the applicant wants to do it with the double booster course. And I think it's high enough, 2-story, can be seen anywhere, and will be much better than anything around the surrounding neighborhood, so I'm fine with it.
Scott?
Yeah, I think if you're going the extra mile to do the starter cores, booster tiles, and the scalloped C tiles, I'm okay with it as well.
Amy, anything different?
I don't know if I would make it not straight. I don't think that part looks good, where it doesn't, and I mean, because it's not two-piece, so I don't know if you can make it look exactly like that. I I think the starter course at the bottom is good, but I think I would just install the rest the way it's supposed to be installed.
Without the boosters.
Without the, no,
Yeah, without the
all the bumps in the
yeah.
I tend to agree.
That's not, because I don't personally think it looks good.
You know,
We
Kind of
seriously, I don't know if it's, and excuse me for interrupting, but I don't know if it's purposely done that way or it's because the logistics actually getting that stuff under shifts the tile over and.
Well, whatever it
Let's
is,
finish our
whatever it is,
review.
I don't think having it veer from the straight line looks good.
it's pretty deliberate.
Yeah, I think it looks like it was on purpose, but I just don't think it looks good.
All right, Howard?
I agree with everyone.
Even though we have different views.
I also feel, as Amy does, that attempting to make this look like an old Spanish roof with S-tiles, the grouted thing doesn't work. It only works really with the pan and cover and all that stuff, and wiggling them around like they did on some of the historic buildings. But I do think it needs at least a double, maybe a triple starter course. And you can grout that or not, but lift up the eave a little bit, and then once you get into the field, just run it with the S-tile, and it'll be fine. And you'll have nice edges, you'll have a nice ridge, you'll have a nice eave, rake, all that, and I think it'll be okay. And I also agree with Tip, because it's not on the main street, main drag. It is in a field, it's in a kind of setback. It'll be fine. Everything else about the building is just fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, as you know, I have a very slightly different view, but I'm not going to push it. I think, obviously, you're not trying to get a two-piece look. You're just providing some randomness as opposed to this very, very uniform, straight line, straight edge. And I think you start lining up all those waves and lines, and it just starts looking like a fake roof. So, anyway, that's my view. But who would like to make a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion for revised after final approval, as submitted with the comment that the booster course should be 2 or 3 and keep all the S-tile straight and not move it up left and right.
Okay.
Second.
How about field mortar boosters?
No, I don't think.
And mortared
I-
end pieces at the wall and mortared stops at the ridge, like shown in the photographs. Are we just eliminating all of that?
Yeah, I just think you try to make it look like something else, and no one ever will see it from the 2-story up, and it just make it messy. That's my motion.
Should the
I side with Kirk.
Yes.
I like
Richard, go ahead.
If I may, I think it's important to have at least
The cap? Oh, yes.
The cap.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
cap, you
I
had
think
Yeah.
that's what you.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
I think it's part of it.
Caps. Yes.
Yeah, the cap.
And,
You must have a cap.
yeah.
yeah.
No, not just the cap. Go ahead,
Caps
explain what
and-
you're saying, Richard.
And the tiles at the.
Where it meets the wall.
Where it meets the wall, yes, the rake edge.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think everyone's in
Yeah.
agreement
Yeah,
with
we're
that.
in
Yeah, we
And-
agree with that.
So no.
I'll just
boosters in the
interject.
field.
Yeah, I mean, I brought Richard by this to show him this is what boosters look like, and I didn't bring him there to show him that I think they look particularly good. And this, that he, everybody is a subjective deal here, but this is rougher than what our building deserves. I mean,
much rougher.
we're trying to make a really nice product, and if we put too many boosters in, it doesn't work.
I'm for it. I think that
I agree.
the only elimination of grout would be in the field.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it, rakes, hips, ridges, eaves would all be
We have a number
traditionally
of
grouted.
We have a number of rakes too that really, that's what you see when you look at the gable ends of this building, and or you look at the two-piece starter course.
Is this your building?
Yes, that's exactly.
I'm fine. If it was an eve, it'd be different. It's a rake.
Unless you're looking to us to provide
support for your position. We can just support the plans as presented, and you guys can work out the details in agreement.
I would go for no grout in the field.
Okay.
That's
All right.
good.
So the motion I have
Right.
Second.
is,
Seconded by Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
so it was
Thank you,
5-0.
ladies.
And I just want to make sure what the motion was.
Yeah.
So I just have final approval of the review after final as submitted with a double or triple starter course. You don't want to specify.
Right. We're leaving it up to the architect
Okay,
to
thanks.
work out the details.
And sea tiles at ridges and.
on the plan?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is? Okay. Yeah.
What we've agreed is what I have on the plans now.
Okay.
I didn't include the boosters and fields. So.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So
You can take that.
that's our final project for this evening, and I'm
We have
going
one more.
We have
No,
one.
there is.
36 Hitchcock Way.
Oh, we have one
Slate
more.
roof be better next time.
36 Hitchcock Way. The new item. Is the applicant here?
Yeah, cutting down all the trees. Hello.
Yeah, this exciting project.
This is a proposal to replace 50 mature eucalyptus trees with 24 native trees in 3 phases. Trees to be removed comprise 48 blue gum, eucalyptus globulus, 1 weeping red gum, and 1 banana gum, ranging in height from 25 to 100 feet. New trees will be planted in 3 phases. Comments only because a environmental assessment is required.
Bob Cunningham, Arcadia Studio Landscape Architect.
Bill Spewak, Consulting Arborist.
And we also have a couple of people from the YMCA, the applicant, but unless you've got questions for them, they'll just remain quiet.
All right.
So, presumably you're all somewhat familiar with the site. This is Rowborough Creek. Over here to the north is the Whole Foods building. YMCA building is down here. And earlier this year, a huge tree that was located here, a eucalyptus, just fell over and went that way. And thankfully didn't do very much damage, but it could have done a lot of damage. This is the Wise children's play area within this fence. And as you can see, we've got about 20 big eucalyptus trees in that area. There's a lot of concern about branches dropping, root rot, and so on. Bill is the project arborist and can give you a thorough description of what the issues are with these trees. We would like to replace them with a smaller number of oaks and sycamores and alders, which are all we feel appropriate for the location. But we don't feel that we need to replace the eucalyptus on a 1-to-1 or greater basis because they're pretty jammed in there. And sycamores, as you know, and oaks, you're going to have spreads of 30, 40, 50 feet. So planting a whole bunch of those in here, we don't think that's necessary. I do have an email from George Johnson of the Creeks Division that's a copy of what he sent to Susan Gantz in response to reading the plan. And he's made some recommendations that I'm not sure we agree with or we feel are appropriate. But we can deal with that separately from this board, although I would like this board's opinion regarding the quantities of the trees, because, as I say, you can see from the pictures that the eucalyptus are really crowded in there. Probably many of them are seedlings from the older trees that have been there longer. That may or may not be true. I'm just spouting off here. It's again, I think that we can get by with fewer trees. We are not planting this as a restoration project. We are simply removing what we feel are the dangerous trees. And because we know that they're all skyline trees, we do need to replace them with substantial trees. Ultimately, we just don't feel that we need 150 trees to replace on a 3-to-1 basis, which is what Mr. Johnson's requesting. And that's essentially it. If you got any questions technically about the trees, Bill can respond. We've got a whole table here. I didn't bring a magnifying glass. I'm sorry about that. But trees are numbered 1 through 50 in the left-hand column, and the risk assessment and condition of the tree and so on and so forth is all shown in here. The yellow trees are the ones that we would like to remove first. The green ones are second, and the gray ones are third. We would do this over a 3-year period, starting as soon as we get approval.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Initially, I was called out when that tree fell, the big eucalyptus that hit the building, in the tot lot. And they had since closed the tot lot down because it's not safe, obviously. And I looked at that tree to see why it fell. And it had some fungal infection, which I didn't get the actual fungus identified because it didn't have any fruiting bodies, but it was evident that there was a fungal infection because the base of the tree was rotten below ground. That day, I also, or 2 days before, a day before, I looked at a tree just passing by on Milpas Street that fell on a person by the produce place. It was a city-owned tree in the parking lot there. Same kind of thing. In fact, I got on TV. It was pretty cool. But the tree fell over, and you looked at the base, and it was the same fungal infection with rot underneath. So we've got this issue going on with eucalyptus. The YMCA is concerned because they want to use their property that's 24/7. That place seems like always with lots of kids and everything and adults around. So when I looked at that, I noticed that a lot of sandy soil, totally dried out. I went down with the soil auger to check soil down to about 3 feet throughout the tot lot area, bone dry. And a lot of the trees in here, if you go look at them, you can see that the branches are dying back. There's a lot of shoots on them, a lot of response, because that's what happens with the blue gum is that as they die back, they often get a lot of new shoots, what we call adventitious growth. You may know them as suckers. So we're seeing a lot of that, but we're seeing a lot of dieback. And that's concerning because it's an indication that there's clearly a root problem. I do not think a lot of those trees lean, and I don't think they're safe. I think they have a high potential to fail. Maybe not in calm days, but certainly if we get a winter this year, get winds, they have a high potential to fail. And that was really the starting point of this project. As I went through the property, looking at some of these massive trees, there's, I think, 3 or 4 very big trees over here that lean over the parking lot. Now, they're not rooted in here, but they are still very large. And if you're familiar with the blue gum eucalyptus, it has a tendency to fall in heavy winds and rain and so forth, or sometimes limbs just break. So we're really concerned about these. I think there's 1, 2, 3 big trees here, and then there's a couple on the edge right here that lean into the parking lot. So the goal on the first phase is to reduce as much risk as possible with these trees, get these out. These are not in the creek, so I don't really know if that's a creek issue, but these are at the top of the creek. And then after that's done, the idea is to, you said not restore, But, I mean, the first phase is not restoration. The first phase is safety. And then the second part is then trying to remove the non-native species, the eucalyptus, replace them with native species. Because if you look at any creeks in Santa Barbara, you can see how eucalyptus dominate, and they're wiping out all of the non-natives. All the natives, I'm sorry. And they also pose a huge fire risk. You've seen that throughout the state of California. Places, Oakland, for instance, that's a good urban area that would burn to the ground almost or that big Oakland fire years ago. We've had the Sycamore fire and all the different fires. So these are very high risk when it comes to fire as well. So the first phase is to reduce the risk. The second and third is to get rid of the non-native eucalyptus that are dominating and replace them with native trees.
Okay. Is there a planting plan that shows the replacement?
There is. I believe there is. Yeah. So, yeah, these with the squiggly edges are, I believe these are the sycamores.
What page?
The last page, LP1.
LP1.
Yeah, you've got it there. These are the oaks. These are the oaks. And these are the alders. And then over here, because this is essentially the entrance to the Wise parking lot, we already have 7 queen palms. So to replace this one eucalyptus, we're proposing just a couple of queen palms in this location, rather than mess with the design that we have. We do have photographs too on one of the pages here that show the problematic trees. I think in their photographs with the trees circled or indicated. And then the parking lot trees are evergreen pears. We're not proposing any more of those. Again, we're trying to fill in the skyline as it gets removed. There will be a period where we have not much of a skyline. The requirement that Creeks has typically is to replace these with trees from locally grown and collected stock, which means plants from Gaviota down to Rincon on the coast. That's to maintain genetic purity of the local native landscape. So we may not be able to get really big trees, containerized trees, to fill that request. We'll get the biggest ones we can, but most nurseries don't grow those kinds of plants without contracts to do so, which means that they'll grow them for your project and then they don't have any more left.
All right.
And we will irrigate. We'll have a complete irrigation system to get these things going, and we'll maintain them until they're healthy and thriving.
Okay. The environmental part of this is, what do you anticipate that would take for review?
I don't know. Maybe staff has that answer.
I've got a draft letter that's getting ready to go out to you. I was waiting for George Johnson's comments. I would like to read that email so that it's, because Bob was mentioning some of the items, but I think I'll just read it. Recommendations: number 1, please remove alders from the planting plan. These trees are not appropriate for the upper bank of the creek because growing conditions are too dry. Replace the oak with oaks or sycamore. Use only trees from local genetic stock. Replace trees at a 3-to-1 ratio. This will ensure that at least 50 trees reach maturity to replace the trees being removed. Also, additional trees help mitigate for the temporal loss of mature trees while the young trees grow. Parentheses, there will be a 25 to 50-year period without any large mature trees in this area. Number 4, the landscape plan should include a permanent drip irrigation system to water the trees. And then I had already sent the plans to Neil Wilson in Water Resources, and he says typically a project of this type must plant 8% or greater low water use plants, including trees. Of 24 trees to be planted, 5 are alder and 11 sycamore, which are both considered medium water use trees due to their native occurrence along our creeks. 16 24th trees are alder, and sycamore equals 66% of total as medium water users, so this requirement is not met. So please either provide an official exception request letter that makes the case for why these trees would be appropriate in this context, and specifically address the trees' expected water consumption over time, the water use basis for this rule, or adjust the plant palette to comply with the 80-20 requirement. So that would be something that you would have to submit to Public Works Director in writing.
Okay. All right. So does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
All right.
So are they asking for water for eternity or just for establishment?
I think for eternity, for as long as we're going to be watering them.
Okay, I guess that's something
we'll have
we
to
take
talk
up.
about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely will be submitting a request for an exception, and I don't know how hard we'll fight for the alders, but we believe the oaks and sycamores are entirely appropriate. And to be truthful, there isn't much, if you take away sycamores, that can replace the skyline of the eucalyptus here, without getting some more eucalyptus.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
So, okay, questions?
We have to get public comment. Is there anyone from the public that's here that would like to comment on this project? No, but we did receive one public comment letter from Edward Steinfeld. He's requesting that the 2 eucalyptus trees that are directly behind his property at 250 Calle Esperanza be left.
Those are not part of this project.
Those trees are over on this. Edward's house is along the south property line of the YMCA, and the trees that he's referring to are in this area.
Okay.
We're not addressing those.
All right. So then we can go on to questions from the board. Howard.
So this is a concept plan, and it's this plan based on you're having looked at these trees and determined that all eucalyptus trees are unhealthy. All eucalyptus trees are bad. They all have to come out. That kind of the spirit of the project.
What I said was the trees in the tot lot are bad. I did a hazard evaluation. I'm saying the trees in the tot lot are high risk, and there were, what did I say? 1, 2. There were 4 along here that were high risk.
I see.
And I'm proposing that those come out before the winter to mitigate that risk. The other trees are primarily to be removed to reduce the potential fire hazard and restore the area to native trees. So that is why it's a phased project. Remove the risk and then work on the rest of the project.
Okay. Notice that on the landscape plan here it says plant schedule phase 1. You add up the numbers, it says there are 12 little yellow circles, and I only see 10 circles on the plan. Am I missing something?
Maybe.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where are the other 2? Just curious.
Well, you have 2 right there.
Yes,
You have
those are
those
included
two?
in the 10. In the 10.
3, 4, 5, 6,
Somewhere else?
7, 8, 9.
10 trees should be replaced as phase 1.
Only 10 are being replaced.
We're only showing 10.
Oh,
Okay.
well, they wrote in 10,
Okay, I see.
but I guess the math doesn't.
10 trees replaced.
8.
Okay, that's it.
Okay,
Amy. Read the fine print. Thank you.
Just based on the Creek's suggestion of the 3-to-1 ratio, what is your ratio?
Our ratio is a 1/2 to 1, basically.
1/2 to 1?
And
Okay.
it's, again, based on my contention that the eucalyptus trees are really crowded in there already. Oaks and sycamores get big, and I think it's a more sustainable project to plant a number that can be sustained over time. And the more we plant, the more we're going to need to irrigate. And if we plant too many oaks and sycamores in particular, we'll probably have to irrigate those for a longer period of time because they'll be competing with each other for water. And we don't anticipate losing trees. We're going to make the commitment, spend the money, do the planting, and maintain them.
Okay. That was all I had.
Okay, Scott?
How tall is a 5-gallon alder and a 5-gallon sycamore when they're planted?
Maybe 5 feet.
5 feet?
At the most.
How long does it take to get to 10 feet? A year?
Probably 2 feet a year for those two. An oak would be maybe 1 foot a year.
Okay.
So it'll take a long time. Typically, it's actually better to plant from smaller sizes because the roots haven't been confined, and they will more readily root into the ground, and the tree will grow faster.
It's been a long game here.
It's going to take a while.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tip?
Yeah. This question for Bob. It seems like you are removing this. Our comment to remove a total of 24, 34, 42, 50 eucalyptus trees. By removing 50 trees, you pretty much drastically changing the look of the whole landscape facing the creek.
Mm-hmm.
Especially these trees are, 100 feet tall?
I don't think there's anything that tall.
There are some that are
60,
that tall.
70, maybe.
So I have two questions for you. Question number one would be, it seemed to be a pretty, might be a drastic measure, and just like when you go to the doctor, before you make any drastic measure, you want to ask for a second opinion. Have the RMCA retain another arborist beside Bill to make sure that that's the right thing to do to remove 50 trees?
No.
Before you cut them? That's question number one, no.
We only
And
have one
question number
arborist.
two is by replacing 50 of them and with 5-gallon plants, as you said, they're that big, taking out the pot. Would YMCA willing to go to things that most people are willing to do, like 24 inches boxes instead of 5-gallon?
If we can get the trees that meet the criteria of the Creeks division, then we'll get larger trees. And we actually have
5-gallon is really,
no, you're right.
small.
You're right. But as I think I explained, typically the people who grow these kinds of plants from locally collected stock grow them on contract. So when you have a project, you ask them to start growing the trees for you. And when when your project is ready, the trees are usually not very big. They may be 5, maybe 15 gallon. Now there are
question, because I know that you see a lot of projects in Montecito, people trucking.
Oh, sure.
All the time to do some real planting. You don't see any of them get approval for 5-gallon oak trees. So that's just my question.
Again, we're dealing with the Creeks Division's policies for locally collected stock. If we buy in trees from, even south of Ventura, and we get big ones, they're not going to meet that criterion. And I'm not sure we'll be able to get their approval to do this. We'll do the best we can. We will start looking for larger trees, tomorrow.
Can I add to that?
Let me just ask one question to go along with Tip's question. Are all of these trees in the creek, or are these not in the creek? It doesn't seem like those would be in the creek.
These are not in the creek. This is just a big dangerous tree.
Yeah.
These are not in the creek.
Yeah.
And again, these are the ones we're going to take out first.
So we could have you replace these with bigger ones.
Yes, absolutely, and we'd be willing to do that. Yeah, I'm not saying we're not willing to do that.
I know.
We're talking about the trees. Here's the top of the bank right here. It's a faint line.
Okay.
You can see that. Yeah.
Okay. Bill, did you want to say something else?
Yeah. Some projects I've been involved in, we divide it into zones. We have the creek zone, which is regulated by creeks, like in Costa Rica project, where 5-gallon trees are acceptable, not big trees. And then the trees that are removed in the landscape are replaced with larger trees. And that's exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Is these are, the tot lot is not in the creek. It's on the other side. And this is not in the creek. The only ones in the creek that are a concern are these very big leaning trees. Those are, their trunks are in the creek except for these two over here. But these trees, one, 2, 3, have their roots in the creek. All the rest of these, and in the tot lot, do not.
Okay.
And, in terms of the tot lot in particular, I think we'd want to put in some larger sycamores. That's what we're proposing here.
Okay.
For some tall shade. And because we want the tot lot to remain usable, we want to get some larger trees in there so that we'll have shade sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
variable PR2, which is 15 gallon.
we'll make it bigger. Yeah, we always go in small because we know you guys are going to tell us to make them bigger. I'm just being truthful.
All right.
Let me make one more point, if you don't mind. You're right that this is going to take out a lot of trees, but the Y also has quite a few other skyline trees, and they don't all show up on these photographs, but they have. They've got some redwoods, they've got some Canary Island pines on the site, and they've also got some eucalyptus that will remain. So we're not wiping out everything. We're taking out what's in the creek and what's directly adjacent and what's in the tot lot. Pardon me?
There's still the adjacent side of the creek behind.
Good point.
That all those skyline trees are staying.
That's Sean Dalen, Facilities Director for the Y.
So
Yeah.
the whole entire skyline.
You have to come up if you want to talk.
All right.
The whole entire skyline, I know everybody's aesthetics is what we're really worried about, and being able to look out over, and all of a sudden all these top trees are gone. We're only concerned, obviously, with the first and foremost, the safety and security of our members and our employees. The other one, like I said, though, is what we're looking at here. There's still a whole nother side to this creek behind Whole Foods. That's still abundant with fauna. We're not touching those trees. We've never done a count. There's probably still 20 skyline eucalyptus on that side that aren't a detriment to our property. So I just wanted to put that there too. So it's not going to disappear. Just our side will look dramatically different for a little while.
Also, quite a few evergreen ash trees that are in the neighborhood of 40 to 60 feet in the creek and along Hope Avenue.
Okay.
So, in terms of skyline, it's going to be an impact. It's not going to take out everything. I would say maybe 50%.
Comments, Tip?
Yes, first of all, I'm not sure I have enough information to make a comment on this issue for a couple of reasons. Number one, to remove 50 trees, in my opinion, is major undertaking. And if that major undertaking, just like everything else, I would like, at least my opinion, I'd like to see a second opinion. I know Bill is very reputable, but I want to hear another second opinion about the trees. I don't think that we can just sit here and say, let's take 50 trees down because that's what YMCA want to do, and then replace them with 5 gallons, 10 gallons. I think that doesn't work for me. So that I like to see, because even though you might not remove trees on the other side of the creek, but we don't want to have another project coming in and remove the other half. 2 years later, then everything is gone. Secondly, if you had to remove them, I definitely want to have the site to be much, much bigger than the 15 gallon as you propose. So that's my comment. I just can't support it with the information as presented.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Generally okay with the project. I think I agree with Tip. Where possible, bigger is better. Just so that we don't have 10 years where it looks really denuded. In general, I'm okay with the project.
Okay. Amy?
I think in general, as far as like the safety concerns, I'm okay with sort of the removal of some of the eucalyptus and replacing with mostly oaks and sycamore, but I think that it should be a higher ratio, closer to what the Creeks was asking for, instead of like a half it's at least 1-to-1 with potentially larger trees. Just so, because there is going to be a pretty drastic difference. But I think at least if it's 1-to-1 and it's a larger box, it would be, I think, more acceptable.
Howard?
I agree with the comments, probably specifically the maybe the larger size and the higher ratios. But I do think that this project is a good project for this campus. It's kind of it's time, and it has vision. So it's going to take 25 years. This means you guys will have to be around for another quarter century to half century.
We've been here 130 years in town, so
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we have no plans to leave the area.
so this is a concept approval today?
Comments only,
Comments only.
because
Oh,
environmental.
that's right. Okay. All right.
This is a question for you. I'm wondering, since it is a lot of trees, big trees, if it would be feasible to go out and mark them for us. You know, put a tag on them or a flag on them. So as opposed to having you map all the ones that are behind, that seems like an easy alternative. Okay. And we could just drive by and say, oh, well, yeah, you could take those out because there's 10 behind or whatever, you know. And at least that would help me get a better sense of what we're talking about, because and the other comment I would make is that I think we have, you know, two of the best professionals in town sitting in front of us right here, who have studied, yeah, present company accepted.
Well, and that's what I was going to
Is it, was
minutely
you leaving out me
comment
or
on
Sean?
One of our neighbors a few years ago did a similar project, actually larger than this, and used these gentlemen for that purpose. So we went next door to our neighbor and said, when you found out that you were going to take on this, who did you use, and how was your success?
Right.
And that's how we came to these professionals.
So I'm saying that you know, the replacement ratio. This is not, at least in my view, this is not you know, trying to cheap out on providing trees. This is looking at what these trees are going to do in mature growth, and also recognizing that we have a big water issue in this county, in all of California, if not the entire West Coast. That it's a judicious use of water to provide, you know, to plant only the amount of trees that you need, and to keep them well tended and watered, so that in maturity they're not crowding each other out, and you end up having to kill trees, knock trees down, or having them fight one another, and you've been supplying water for the whole time. So to me, that's a very legitimate argument, but I see that you're going to have to work it out with the Creeks Department and make your argument. And so, you know, and the city has an arborist as well, who is not yet involved, but will be involved, I'm sure. Will he or not? No? Okay. Well, can we ask him to review the project and give his opinion on it? Then we're getting another professional involved. But to me, it seems like a reasonable plan, knowing that there's more screening behind it as well. But so that would be, since it's comments only, how many board members are okay with the idea of having them flag the trees to be removed so we could do a site visit, drive by? Okay. So we'll leave it at that. And you want the 2-week continuance, or? No, can't do it 2 weeks. It's going to be a month anyway.
Yeah, just if you could just make it indefinite.
Okay.
I'm almost done with the letter, and they're going to have to provide some other information. They probably won't be back in.
Okay, so it'd be,
no way they'll be back in 2 weeks.
indefinite continuance back to the full board with the request to provide, flag the trees to be removed for site visit.
Okay, we'll advise staff when we've got that done.
So
Okay.
the comments also, wouldn't they reflect the ones about the increased sizes where possible, and also the increased ratios where possible?
Yeah.
Sure.
Replacement
Well,
ratio?
I don't agree with the ratio.
I think I would side with Kirk on the ratio. It looks pretty well splayed out right now in terms of
I think
number.
size is crucial.
But size
Yeah,
is,
size- I
where
guess size
possible,
is more
to increase
critical.
the size, I think that we should include that. All right,
So it's just flagging the trees are being removed and increase the size where possible.
yes.
And have the city arborist.
Review.
Yes, yes.
I'll do that. You don't need to make that in the motion. I'm going to do that.
Okay, who would
Can
like
I comment on that?
briefly? Yes.
Okay. In the creeks, because they're small trees and they're with very limited irrigation, increasing the number is reasonable. When you move out to here into the landscape, if you're taking out 20 trees in here to put 60 in, even big trees, it's way too much. 1-to-1 out here with larger trees, if that many at all, or half to one, those are all irrigated. You know, because you're putting big trees in, you've got to get irrigation on them. They're going to take a lot of water.
Okay. Why don't you come back with that argument next time with the revised plan? So we have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
I did.
Oh, okay.
Seconded by Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you
very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And that finishes our evening's meeting. And we'll close with a quote from Louis Kahn, who said that a great building must begin with the unmeasurable, must go through measurable means when it is being designed, and in the end must be unmeasurable.
Less is more.
Or, in shorter words, what does it want to be?
Really?
Yeah. What does a building want to be?
Oh, well, that's very deep.
It happens.
Oh, you're welcome.